There we go. Welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of Rotoballer, my co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network. I don't have anything to say for this Kansas race. Holy shit. What a finish. Closest finish in NASCAR Cup Series history. Kyle Larson beats Chris Buescher to the line. The race was in Denny Hamlin's hands. Martin Truex Jr. was nipping at the bud to come and get that win as well. Chase Elliott ends up third. Truex fourth. Hamlin chokes on the final restart. I don't know. Is that the best way to put it? Ends up
yes
fifth.
And no. Like he said he should have taken the top instead of the bottom. And once Larson put him three wide, he was pretty much sucker holed with the, having a side draft on both sides. So I don't know if that's choking or just Larson being aggressive, or maybe Hamlin should have just taken the top, like you said. And yeah, it's tough to say.
Yeah, Kyle Larson gets his second win. As our good friend Ryan Stevens of Win the Race tweeted, Larson goes out and destroys all the long shot tickets out there. The plus 250 favorite after practice and qualifying, Kyle Larson ends up winning it at the end. Second win of the season for him. Chris Buescher doesn't come out of nowhere, but it was one of those races where, not a lot of people were talking about Buescher heading into it. He ended up having one of the best cars. We see that typically out of RFK, where they have a few races a year where they just seemingly come out of it. They don't come out of nowhere, but it's a surprise when they're as fast as they are during the race.
Yeah.
Buescher could have definitely won that race. Hamlin, I think, had the best car, led the most laps, finished fifth. Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch had a great car that race. He caused that final caution, drove up from 21st up to 8th on that final green-white checkered stint. Noah Gragson with another top 10 finish, and Michael McDowell rounding it out. Our boy Todd Gilliland ended up 14th, John Hunter Nemechek 13th. Noteworthy items, the 2311 boys, who we both expected to have very good races, were not very good in this race. Tyler Reddick scored 8th in stage 2. That's it. Bubba Wallace did not score any stage points. He ended up 17th. Reddick ended up 20th. Just not a very good day for them. William Byron also, after he tagged the wall or had issues in qualifying, he started 36th. He ended up 23rd. He did race up there in the top 10 a little bit, but, he didn't have a great race. Carson Hocevar kind of got screwed on his final pit stop. He was having a good mid-teens day once again. Ended up 24th, having to come pit for fuel. Corey LaJoie was also having a good race. So something noteworthy for those two guys. And I don't remember what happened to Ty Gibbs. He finished 6th in both stages, ended up 32nd at the end of it, a full lap down. I don't know
what happened there. For fuel, I think. I don't know if they were completely topped off and or he had a tire issue on that last stint. But, I remember he came in before everybody else did while it was still under green flag, while everybody else was thinking, might need to save fuel and stuff. He came in the pit. So either a tire issue or didn't get all the fuel in or just weren't saving enough, something like that. But, strong run, just a bad result for Ty Gibbs.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it was, we came into this race knowing that Kansas has put on some of the best races in this next-gen era. And it's safe to say that Kansas is probably the best track on the schedule right now. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing from Kansas, I was completely serious in my tweet saying the entire schedule should be 36 races at Kansas. Everyone is going to be entertained every single week. This race had everything. We saw passing. We saw people able to get runs. We saw a bunch of crazy cautions for whatever reason at the start of stage 3. We saw fuel mileage come into play, and then we saw the finish. The finish was just the icing on the cake. And, some people are pointing to that and saying that's why everyone thinks it's a good race. No, that was a great race from start to finish.
And
that was
not
just
only we
a
had
great
passing,
race.
We had 10, 15 lap battles for the lead,
Mm-hmm.
trading the lead side by side, back and forth. Look, the Ross, what was it? Was it Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson for like 15 laps, just trading the lead back and forth, side by side, and then the same thing happened with Hamlin and somebody. There were multiple times where these drivers just crossover, somebody would do a slide job, but then the other guy would dive bomb underneath in like a crossover type move that you see almost at road courses. It was
we saw
amazing.
5 wide at one point.
Yeah, we saw 5 wide for the second place, I should say, on a restart. But I'm talking just like under a green flag condition. We saw a 15 lap battle for the lead, back and forth, trading back and forth between Larson and Ross Chastain. And then the crazy thing is they traded lead back and forth so much that Denny Hamlin just went and passed both of them after they wore their tires out.
Yep. It was I don't know how we can beat that race. I don't know if it's possible. That race had everything, and now that we had this Kansas race, we had the Atlanta finish. Like this season, we've been spoiled through we're not even halfway through the regular season yet, and we have been spoiled with some great races. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be controversy. This obviously scored highest on Jeff Gluck's poll, the Good Race poll. There's still 4.2% or something of people that voted no. I genuinely I want to know, why don't these people find something else to do? If that race didn't do it for you, why just find something else to do with your time? Why are you wasting time watching NASCAR if that wasn't it for you? I don't know what people want. I can make a case, and most other races were okay, maybe they didn't like this, maybe they didn't like this. This race had everything. This race literally had everything. You cannot. This was the perfect race, in my opinion.
I honestly don't even think the 4.2% of people that voted no disliked the race. I think a lot of them are, I'm going to be an edgelord and vote no because it's funny, that kind of shit. And looking through, the replies on Jeff's poll, when people actually voted no, there was almost no, nobody almost really said why they voted no. I just think 4.2% of people just think they're funny and they're not. They think, oh, I'm being so cool voting no. Ha, ha, ha. Nobody cares if you voted no. You're not. Nobody knows who you are. There's 40,000 people voting, whatever. You're not doing anything except just being a moron. I think of the 4.2% of those people, I think 90% of them actually liked the race. They're just voting no to just be trolls.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it even less amount of people that actually voted no because they disliked it. I don't think anybody, I really don't think anybody disliked the race. They may have disliked the outcome, but I'm sure prior to the final outcome, they liked the race. Maybe they disliked the commercials, but that's not the race. That's the broadcast. There's a difference between the broadcast and the race. There's a difference between the outcome and the race. So I don't think anybody disliked the race. I legitimately don't think anybody disliked the race. I think the only people voting no, 90% of them are being trolls, and the other 10% disliked something that doesn't actually have to do with the race.
Right. The one response that I did mark that was because I was going through the back and forth of when the poll initially went up, and someone made a point of, I'm just someone that's seen a lot of great racing. There's been so many bad races this year that it makes this one look fantastic.
So that's the reason to vote no?
We did go through a stretch. Yeah, right? We did go through a stretch.
So you voted no because other races were worse.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Again, not a reason to vote no.
It's not. And, and what's crazy is you could put this race up immediately after any other race this season, and I would immediately say Kansas is the bet.
Atlanta and Kansas, easily the two bet. Here's the other crazy thing: the two insanely close finishes we had this year were also from start to finish the best races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that makes them two of the best all-time races in the next gen era, in the Jeff Gluck pole era, whatever you want to call it. I know some people vote no on drafting racing because it's drafting racing. Whatever, go screw yourselves, because drafting racing can be awesome, and Atlanta was. But yeah, I mean, Atlanta and Kansas, start to finish, both of them were absolute bangers of a race with, in my opinion, nothing more you could ask for in a finish as well throughout a whole banger of a race.
Yeah, you look back at Talladega, that had a crazy finish, which a lot of people liked. It had people saying that was an instant classic. No, that was not a good race. It wasn't a good race, in my opinion. It
had a wild finish after a terrible finish. Yeah.
Or a terrible race.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But as is the case pretty much every week, there's controversy, people questioning the results of this race, whether Larson actually got the win, whether NASCAR can be trusted. And, I'll be the first one to admit, I always err on the side of not trusting NASCAR and not believing some of their judgments. And I have yet to see anything that makes me want to think that Chris Buescher won this race. I think it was pretty cut and dry. And I saw the podcast with what's his name, Brett Griffin, those guys, and he was comparing it to the Kentucky Derby, which also had an amazing finish this weekend. He was comparing it to the Kentucky Derby, and he was saying, they knew immediately, that camera was able to know immediately who won the Kentucky Derby race. Mm-hmm. Okay, one, they are not going 180 something miles an hour.
Yeah.
And two, I don't think he realizes that a horse track is completely level. Like a camera that's sitting
it's a straightaway. Yeah.
Yeah. And Kansas is banked. So the fact that we have the ability
and curved at the start finish line.
Yeah. So the fact that we have the ability to accurately get this as quick as they did. I know that's like the big thing too. Like NASCAR didn't call the race quick enough, and the transponder said that Buescher won it. So you have to remember, these fucking transponders are put on by people, so those are not completely accurate.
Well, plus they're also put on different, like for each car, a Ford or a Toyota or a Chevy may have it like in slightly different places, measurement, like. But there's no controversy. There's none. It's literally the same. Honestly, the camera technology is the same they use at Kentucky Derby. Mm-hmm. It's just harder, like you said, with NASCAR, because it's faster, it's banked, it's curved at the start-finish line instead of straight. So all those things make it a little bit, and a lot of it harder, especially with the speed. You can't really see that with your naked eye. But I could tell who won the Kentucky Derby with my naked eye. Mm-hmm. It still needed a photo finish to confirm, to just kind of air quote prove. Like I couldn't tell who won between Larson or Buescher with my naked eye at all.
Oh no,
not a chance. No chance in hell. And obviously the transponder pops up, Buescher wins, but I know, and we've seen many times throughout the years, the transponder is sometimes wrong. Mm-hmm. So I still knew, even though air quote Buescher won, I knew we had to wait for the official, final review video, laser cameras, all that stuff. Just like if we finished under caution, right? Like a caution flies and the guys are side by side when the caution flies. It's the same thing. It's just that's a review process. Mm-hmm. The transponder that you all see on, especially trusting Fox or NBC, with their scoring thing, we know never to trust those. Like, come on. So, I don't think there's controversy. I mean, the other controversy was Larson too aggressive by door slamming Chris Buescher. Oh. And you look at the replay, and Buescher also kind of came up, right? That's just racing. Yeah. There's literally nothing controversial about this finish. Nothing. Not the video review, not the transponders, not the how they raced each other. Nothing controversial.
When I was watching it live, I thought that was a little bit aggressive by Larson, but yeah, then I saw the replay and I'm like, actually, that's...
Buescher comes off of, like, he was near the grass and he comes up slightly more... He's still on the apron, but he comes up. And Larson is coming down, and it's just one of those things, they collided. Larson's trying to, run him close, and I don't think he's expecting Buescher to come up as much as he did. And so they hit a little harder than expected, but that's nothing dirty. Nobody did anything dirty. There's no controversy to that finish whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. None.
The fact of the matter is Kyle Larson gets his second win of the season. 6 stage wins now. He's looking in great shape for the playoffs. Obviously, Buescher is in solid shape in the points. But Larson now has a full almost 30-point advantage over Truex. Not only does this win give him 5 more playoff points come playoff time, but that, further his gap to get the extra playoff points with these standings. So just overall a great race for Larson. Obviously heartbreaker for Chris Buescher. That could have locked him into the playoffs. Could have gotten another win for RFK, but still a great result there for them. And then Chase Elliott somehow lucks into another top 5 finish. He did it again 2 weeks in a row. He had the lowest average running position in green flag speed of the top 5 finishers, but he gets it done at the end, comes home third, which I liked because I bet him top 10. That was my only bet I liked after practice and qualifying was Chase Elliott top 10. So I'm glad that hit. One thing, you and I bet it on the show last week, Gregson over Gibbs. So nice to see that one hit, that plus 260 head to head.
I had to track it at plus 200 because by the time I wake up and the podcast is live, it was already 2-1. And I'm not gonna try not to track it until the podcast is out, just so that other people can get it as a good a number as possible. But also so that people listen to our podcast, right? If I would track it while we're on the podcast, it means, now I know what they bet on the podcast. I don't have to listen. So it's one of those content creator dilemmas that we have.
Yeah. Also noteworthy, talking about those two, Gregson, that's his 3rd straight top 10 finish, his 5th top 10 of the season so far.
Mm-hmm.
That, and we can actually, I want to get right into that because the big news right now and the rumor right now is Stewart-Haas potentially going down to 2 charters, potentially merging with Front Row Motorsports. And the biggest question is, if that happens, if they sell 2 charters, who do they keep? And I've heard a lot of people saying, I feel like Briscoe's the easy one. Briscoe's staying. If they cut down to 2, Briscoe's in. And then it comes down to Gregson, Barry, or Ryan Preece, which I think Ryan Preece is out. The tweet that went from Toby Christie talking about the study session, that was another thing. Brett Griffin comment saying how shitty that was and blaming Gregson for not being a good teammate and shit. Preece didn't have to open his mouth about that. He could have kept all that quiet and none of that controversy is going to be public and they address it internally. But Preece had to. That could be my personal bias coming through that I don't like Ryan Preece. But Preece, I think, is easy out. Now it comes to Gregson or Barry. And performance-wise, I think you have to go Gregson. But a lot of the things and a lot of the people that I see are saying Barry would be the second guy in if they would go down to 2. I don't even think
performance-wise, age-wise.
Yeah, you also throw that in there too.
Yeah. Sponsorship-wise, Noah Gregson's more attracted to sponsors, even though he had his controversy. He's just a more sponsorable guy. He has more of a personality, good or bad. He's got more upside than Barry, and he's younger than Barry. To me, it's not even a debate, but I understand why other people think Barry. But yeah,
it has to be because of the controversy thing, right? Because I don't know. In my opinion, Josh Berry is one of those drivers that he could walk through a crowd. He could walk through the crowd at a NASCAR race, and 30% or more of the people would not even know who he is.
Him.
Yeah. Whereas Gregson, I feel like would be a significantly higher percentage.
Here's the thing: last year, Kyle Kirkwood could walk through the crowd at Long Beach and less than 30% would recognize who he is. And then this past year at Long Beach, after he's the defending champion,
everybody,
a year at Andretti and all that, everybody recognized him. So it's the same thing. Josh Berry right now hasn't done enough at the Cup level to have that recognition, or even at the Xfinity level. But Noah Gregson's just he's a personality.
Mm-hmm.
He's Xfinity.
He got punched in the face by Chastain.
He's Xfinity multi-time winner. I don't think he ever won the championship, but multi-time winner, close to winning the championship. Feuds with Ty Gibbs, punched by Chastain. Everybody recognizes Gregson. I would recognize Josh Berry. You would recognize Josh Berry. Yeah. I think most of our listeners would, but there are a lot of casual NASCAR fans. And when we go to a race, if you go to a race, let's say Las Vegas for me, and there's 80,000 people there, you're right. 60,000 or 50,000 people aren't going to recognize Josh Berry, and the other 20 or 30 will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was at Martinsville earlier this year, I was in the fan zone or whatever, and I was just standing there watching one of the crowds, and Todd Gilliland walked by. Nobody recognized him. Nobody like he was just walking to the trailer to go sign autographs, and nobody I was like, I did a double take. I'm like, that's Todd Gilliland. One, I just recognize him because I know what drivers look like. Two, he's tall as shit. For a NASCAR driver, Todd Gilliland is tall as shit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was just kind of like I wasn't gonna do anything or say anything, but I was just kind of watching then to see if anybody recognized him, and he was just going through the crowd like a normal person, and that's exactly how I would see Josh Berry. But yeah, just overall, I think the controversy is the only thing that is making people say that he's the in on that. But this is also a very interesting. So who is the ex Stewart-Haas engineer on Twitter that I follow? I forget his name, but he tweeted out a couple days ago that silly season is going to get pretty weird this year. And I think he's right.
That person, I know who you're talking about. I forget the name.
Brian, maybe
Murphy.
Murphy.
That's it.
Something Murphy. Now I gotta look it up. Brian Murphy. There we go. But I didn't even think of Front Row merging with Stewart-Haas, but now it makes sense.
I hadn't even heard of that until you just mentioned it. Like, honestly.
Oh, really? I think Pockers did a story on it a couple days ago.
Gotcha.
Like it's relatively new, like gossip.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that at all. I thought when you were like, the real news, talking about Noah Gragson, because we just talked about him. I thought you were going to mention the real big news about Noah Gragson.
What's that? Oh yeah, I'll let you break that one.
Breaking news on Stacking Dennys. We had the first completion of the year of the 69 challenge. Noah Gragson finished 9th at Kansas, meaning back-to-back finishes of 6th at Dover, 9th at Kansas, completes the 69 challenge, but he was not the first driver to do that this year. First driver to do that was in the Truck Series because Daniel Dye finished 9th at Kansas the night before, after having finished 6th his previous truck race. So we had a double 69 challenge completion this past weekend at Kansas. And I said I was going to buy merch from the first driver that completed it. So technically Daniel Dye, but we know what Malazzi said about that. So, you know, it has to go to Gragson, I guess. But then, like, do I want to buy merch from guy who liked a racist meme on Twitter? It's kind of thing, right? So it's like, I'm just going to pretend I never said that line and just not buy merch.
Donate a t-shirt to something.
Yeah, exactly. I'll and I don't dislike either of them. I don't have anything against either of them. But I'm not in the merch buying game for either of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's funny that a week after we talked about nobody completing that challenge, that 2 people then completed it the very next week.
It's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
That was funny. So,
but
double 69 challenge completion. This might be the first time definitely the first time since we've been doing the podcast, but I'm saying like the first time in probably, I would guess, a decade that it happened on the same weekend. At least a decade, I would guess, that it happened the same weekend for multiple series.
And you know what? We could see it again this weekend because Christopher Bell finished 6th at Kansas. I could definitely see him finishing 9th at Darlington this weekend. But
yeah, for sure.
Do you have any other takeaways from Kansas before we move on to the point standings?
Honestly, no. Like, the race was fantastic. I will say, actually, I have one more takeaway. It's about the betting side of things, right? I lost. You won 9 units. I lost 9 units. Ballpark. Ballpark, you won 9. I lost 9. But the final restart was a 17 and a half unit downswing for me, right? I would have been up 8.5, setting up down 9.5, or whatever it was, down 9 instead of up 8.5. So 17 and a half unit swing. I'm having one of those years where I'm up, right? My tracking is down, but I'm actually up, right? I forgot to track the William Byron from Daytona 500 where Stevie and I gave out victory lane pick. That would have been plus 18 units. I actually won the AJ Allmendinger top 5 bet at the Daytona 500, even though he finished 6th, because the book that paid it out, but it's tracked as a loss. Like I'm doing the work. Like I got Noah Gragson plus 260 and plus 200 instead of plus 200, but I tracked it at plus 200. Like, so I'm always trying to be as conservative as possible with my tracking or my results and how I report them. So I'm down this year by my tracked results. But that's the thing. Like, I started off the year, I won like the first 3 or 4 races of the season. Literally hit the winner in the first 3 or 4 races. I was up, I think it was maybe 16 units, and now I'm down 8 or 9 or 10 units, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm still waiting for the people at Action Network to grade my custom bets. I'm not allowed to grade them myself for obvious reasons. But I think I'm down around 9 or 10 units on the season tracked. But obviously I'm up more than that based off of ticket results, like what I actually got paid for. But that's NASCAR, dude. We've won money on those late restarts, and we've lost money on those late restarts. And people get really emotional about it. I used to. And we talked about this last week. I'm just done being emotional about that. Like, yeah, I expect a late restart will either screw me if I'm winning or potentially help me if I'm losing. That's just how these things go. And if you're a Stacking Denny's listener and let's say you're relatively new as a Stacking Denny's listener, first of all, thank you. Second of all, those are the swings. Don't let it get to you. I saw, at least in the Action Network Discord, I know some people got pretty emotional about it, and that's fine. If you've lost 3 or 4 weeks in a row, it sucks. It's never fun, but it's okay. I personally had a 3-month downswing last year where I lost 26 units, but I still ended up 25, 30 units tracked last year and more untracked because I couldn't do the custom tracking last year like I can do this year. That's okay. But you also should follow Jordan instead of just me or Greg or whoever, right? We always talk about this. Follow everybody because I take a much riskier approach in betting, even than you do, Jordan, these days. Most of my bets are long shots. And that means I'm going to lose a lot more than I win. I still try to minimize my losses and have big wins, which is profitable in the long run. But I have a high variance, high risk tolerance. That's just who I am. That's where my bankroll is. That's where my, brain lies with distributions. And we talked, like I said, we talked about this a bit last week. If you're not there, don't follow me. Don't tail me. I'm serious. Do not tail me if you don't have the ability to withstand 2 or 3 months of losses, because that's my profile.
And there's a couple things here that I want to add. Obviously, you touched on following different people, and that's always great advice. We all have different betting strategies. Like you said, you are more of a risky better than, like, compared to me. Like my bread and butter lately has been top 10 bets. Those are not risky. Those are typically not risky bets. Will I take long shot top 10s? Yeah. But for the most part, like Chase Elliott, I was betting minus 120, minus 140. Like that was the bet I honed in on last week. And that's where I'm at. Whereas, I'll say it right now. I hate betting outrights. I don't like it. And unless I see a ton of value in it, I don't bet them. Like last week I grabbed Blaney at 22-1. That was because I felt like 22-1 was too long. We talked about that on the episode. You and I both have Logano already, 40-1 for Darlington because it's too long. Like we just know that's just it. I guess my recommendation to listeners is fine. If you are not able to handle the ups and downs and the swings of NASCAR betting, either don't do it or find a method or a system that is a lot less up and down and maybe do head to heads, maybe focus on top 10s where you're
finishing position over under, right? Those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many different ways to bet this sport. And if you go on a losing run, which I've done it, you've done it, like you get in a hole and it fucking sucks. Like when you go through months and months of not hitting shit and late restarts fucking you over, like it sucks and it's frustrating as hell. Either take a week off, take a couple weeks off, lower your bet amounts, just try to get back on your winning system. Because it is a very fun sport.
And the other thing I would say is just analyze it. Did I make good bets or not? I don't care if I lost if I made good bets. And I would say all but the Daniel Suarez bet that I made were good bets, I think. Maybe my Blaney bets. But even then, Blaney was in the top 10. Like those Fords came to life in the nighttime.
At night, yeah.
I always expect the Fords to come to life at night, which is something to remember for the 600. But my Blaney bet was winning. My Keselowski top 10 bet was winning. Kyle Busch bet was winning. Denny Hamlin bet was winning. You know, all these bets I had. Martin Truex Jr. group bet was winning. I had all these bets that were winning. And had Kyle Busch not spun out right there at the end, instead of me being down 10 units this year, ballpark, I'm up 7.5 units this year, tracked. Plus all the ones that we talked about that I should still be up, that I forgot to track the Byron bet, that kind of stuff. But I gave out on Victory Lane and Running Hot, right? So, that's the swings of NASCAR. That's literally betting NASCAR. You can go from a big win to a big loss on the snap of a finger. And that's just the nature of betting the sport. And like you were saying, analyze or find other ways to maybe reduce the variance. Maybe, like you said, more head-to-heads, more finishing position over-unders, top 10s, those kind of things that have shorter odds. And also analyze, did I make a good bet? Did I make a bad bet? Because that helps improve your process. And I learned from this weekend, I bet way too much. So that's a flaw right there. But I still felt good about every single bet I made, even the ones that lost, even the ones that didn't have a chance of winning, except maybe the Blaney bets and definitely the Suarez bet. Those are only maybe 3 bets I regret. Everything else I was really happy with and would bet again. So that's another part of it. Analyze, what did I do right? What did I wrong? Learn from it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great advice. And speaking of, like, you know, that last restart, like Keselowski, that was obviously a good bet. That top 10 bet was a good bet. Keselowski had a great car. He was up there, I think, in the top 5 before that was, and then
he
finished
plus 240,
11th.
right? Like it was plus 240, and he had one of the 5 or 6 best cars at the end of that race.
Yeah, and you know, to finish 11th, that's just, you know, that's frustrating as hell.
And Blaney finished 12th, right? My top 10s finished 11 and 12.
yeah. But, you know,
like Gregson top Ford, right? Like that one, he was winning all day and then got screwed by all those pit strategy stuff at the end there. Oh, I shouldn't say he was winning all day. He was second all day behind Buescher, but then Buescher had his issue, so then Gregson was winning all the rest of the day.
Yep.
But then everything allowed Buescher to get back to the front. It was weird. But like, if you're running second Ford all day and I got him 12-1, that's a good bet, right? Like, I'm not upset about that bet at all whatsoever. Because he closed it, I think it was at Caesars, he closed or MGM, 4.5-1 is top Ford. So, and that's post-practice qualifying. Yeah. I
want to say, in some, he was like plus 250.
Yeah, exactly.
At post-practice qualifying.
You just gotta evaluate your bets. So always make sure you're evaluate, you know, me, evaluate Jordan, evaluate whoever you're tailing. Did they make good bets if I tailed them, right?
But like the final restart and how that changed everything, you know, that's exactly why I stopped, you know, when I was heavy in the DF, because I'm not as bad, but I get pretty emotional when stuff like that happens. And when I had, you know, I remember very specifically, it was a Charlotte race when I was winning like 17,000 with right at the end, and a caution comes out with 3 laps later. And I think I ended up at like 9,000 or something. Still a great day. Don't get me wrong. But it was so, like, I was pissed because I fucking had it. Like, my lineups were as good as they could have been. And then it all just got taken away on a final restart and shit like that. And it's frustrating. So yeah, it is a very fun yet frustrating sport.
I would be more angry when it happens to me in DFS, even today, because you can go from 30, 50,000. You know, I went from 150, 200,000 on the Daytona 500 2016 on the last lap, from 150, 200K win to 35,000 win. And you won 35,000. Yeah, but I just lost 165,000 in the last lap, right? Yeah. Like, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
So I'd be much more mad about that. Wish... But then, like, if I go, I mean, my bet sizes, right? If I'm betting $250 a unit and I go from plus 10 to minus 10 units, that's a $5,000 swing. But that's, I've had $5,000 swings every week of DFS for a couple years. Back when I was full-time in the DFS game. I'm not these days, of course, just because I'm much more into the betting side of things and I live in Vegas. So driving to Arizona or California is a chore to play DFS. And I not only have to do it once, I have to do it twice because I have to enter and then I have to edit my lineups. And I don't want to wait till the day of and enter and find out it's closed, right? Because like DraftKings contests are always closing so early these days. I either have to drive at like asshole early in the morning on Sunday or just potentially miss out on the contest if I drive on Sunday. So I have to go midweek to enter and then go after practice and qualifying again to edit my lineups. So yeah, one of those things.
I will say this. DFS, I feel like the edge isn't quite as there as it has been in the past. It's almost not as fun to play DFS. This past weekend at Kansas, I had a total of 3 lineups. That's all I put in, and it felt amazing. And it was my optimal projected lineup, which was Larson, Reddick, Blaney, Kez, Hocevar, LaJoy, and then just a variation of it of
How was
Hamlin
Byron
and
not in your optimal?
He was like in my 3rd projected optimal.
Gotcha.
Like
I was just saying because like his practice and qualifying times, I mean, he was a top 2 or 3 car based off that. Now, obviously in the race he wasn't, but based off practice and qualifying, based off track and type history, like my model loved William Byron.
I think I had him projected as a top 5 finisher, but like my DFS projections were not crazy high on Bowman to where it was crazy high on Larson.
Yeah,
was the number one.
No, I mean Larson was clearly number 1 in my model. Clearly number 1. So it's just when you're talking about like an optimal, mine said Byron's median finish optimally is good enough, or median points, I should say, DraftKings points is good enough as well to where it fits with Larson. And then, like you said, mine had Keselowski, a couple other guys, but yeah, very clearly for mine, Byron was optimal. Now, I wouldn't say on upside he was for sure, because when you're at that salary, you need dominator points typically,
right?
Or you need to finish top 5, and Byron did not. So when we factor in upside, it wasn't quite there. But like in terms of a median optimal lineup, yeah, Byron was in my projections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly, I was surprised at how low my projections were on Byron, and like I didn't even think about writing him up for cash. I don't know if I would have played him in cash because I liked the build with Larson obviously, and then Hamlin or Reddick otherwise. Just how I wanted to approach that slate, which obviously that's not gonna work a lot of weeks, but Byron finishing outside the top 20 kind of helped my projections there. But yeah, anything else from Kansas for you?
Nah, nothing else. Just wanted to address the betting side of things because I mean I got my ass whipped, but I'm not upset about it. And I know a lot of people who followed me were crushed by that late restart and we're on a losing streak. And whatever, it's fine. We lost. Okay, we would have won if that late caution didn't come out. We made good bets. That's how I feel about it. But 30, I'm also not. Yeah, I'm just also not like to the point where I have huge ups and downs these days on my emotions over my betting results. Certainly if I win something monstrous, right? Or like the overtime bet parlay in NFL that I hit, or the overtime bet in the Super Bowl was just fucking awesome. But, there's definitely some things I get excited about if I win, but I don't get crushed by my losses. I know people remember their losses. Like, let's say poker, they remember their losses, their bad beats more than they remember their wins. But like right now with betting, I'm the opposite. I remember my wins because I lose so much. Like I remember my wins, but I also lose so much because of my profile of being a bettor, right? I'm going to lose 67% of the time, but the 33% of the time I win, I'm going to win big.
Right.
Not necessarily the case for like college basketball, but college basketball, it was just printing money for most of the second half of the season there. But just my profile as a bettor, I'm betting 10, 15 to 1 bets. I'm obviously just going to lose more than I win. So I don't remember my losses because I don't care at this point. I'm expected to lose. Is the the median outcome is losing for the way I bet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something like we talked about. You just need to accept and acknowledge your betting and expected results.
Yeah.
Is probably the best way to put that.
Yeah.
But like I said, Kyle Larson now still firmly atop in the point standings, 29 points ahead of Martin Truex Jr. No change in the top 5. Ryan Blaney jumps William Byron up to 6th in points. Buescher jumps up 3 spots to 11th. Like I said, I think he's pretty good on points, as is Kyle Busch there. Bell's obviously in. Briscoe falls a couple spots to 14th. Keselowski jumps up to 15th. And Bubba, another bad race for Bubba Wallace, another bad race for Joey Logano, who's now 17th in points and on the outside looking in on the playoff standings, where that cut line's at and where that's going to be. One more thing before we get to these playoff standings, because I forgot to talk about this at Kansas. Do we think Daniel Suarez is testing? Because
I've decided, especially after this race, and that's one of the things where I was like, my Suarez bet was bad. At Las Vegas, he finished 11th. It was a flattering finish, but what was unflattering was his green flag speed, because he had a stint on no tires, a long stint on no tires when everybody else took tires, him and McDowell. So I have a lot of my model based off the fact that his flags from Vegas is a lot better than his green flag speed or his average running position, whatever it is. And then the only other intermediate races we had were Bristol, which is fucked up in terms of intermediate package. Dover, where he's really good but shit the bed all race. Texas, where he shit the bed all race but finished 5th because of strategy. And now Kansas. And, I was willing to give him a pass on Dover and in Texas just because they're like track position-y stuff, and his Vegas was really good. But at this point, you got to think Daniel Suarez is testing, right? Especially knowing, even after Texas, right? We had William Byron already won 3 times before Texas. Denny Hamlin already won twice before Texas, and that was 7 races into the season. We had only 4 different winners, so at that point, Daniel Suarez knows his win already locks him into the playoffs. So I think Daniel Suarez is testing. There is always a gap between him and Ross Chastain. There always is. Chastain's a better driver, but the gap has never been this big. So we're at the spot where Suarez is testing, and he might be a value early in the playoffs, I think, like Byron was that one year.
Yeah, I don't think it's any question that not only is he testing, but they are constantly just doing the strategies that nobody else are doing, trying to luck into another win. But I will note that Chastain is also not as fast as expected. Obviously, he was quick at Kansas. He led 43 laps. That was a good race for them. But before that, he hasn't had a top 5 since Vegas in March. That's the last time Ross Chastain had a top 5. The last time he had a top 10 was Coda. The last time that Daniel Suarez had a top 10, he had that 5th at Texas. He hasn't finished in the top 10 in any race since his win at Atlanta. Let's
remember, though, Ross was really good at Texas. He had a stage win.
He wrecked, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or he had an accident. Yeah.
Yeah. But, Ross has been very good. Dover was underwhelming for sure for Chastain. Very underwhelming because we expect him to perform, and in the next-gen car, he had been the best performer until this year's Dover. Talladega's Talladega, whatever. Martinsville's Martinsville. He has some good races. He has some bad races there. And it sucks just in general. Richmond, he's never been great at. So I'm not really too worried about Ross either. He just crushed at Kansas, and then it kind of just went away late, and strategy and all that stuff. I'm not that worried about Ross. Certainly he's not getting the results he was a year or two ago, But maybe they're
he also
down
went through
a
rough stretch.
Yeah, but maybe they're down a little bit on speed. But I mean, you watch Kansas, you watch that 15, 20 lap battle for the lead with Kyle Larson and just the whole. I mean, then he was, and even after that 15 lap battle with Larson and Hamlin passes them, Larson fell off a second or two back, but Ross was still battling with Denny for the lead then at that point. Like he still kept up with Denny. So I'm not worried about Trackhouse. I'm not worried about Ross. I'm not worried about Daniel Suarez. I think, this was the race that made me realize Daniel Suarez is testing.
Mm-hmm. And something, how I just pointed out with Ross, we also just went through a stretch, and this has to be a constant reminder for people. We just went through a stretch of shorter track races, which is going to kind of change and make recency bias of how people are performing, because we're now away from these short tracks. So teams that aren't very good at short tracks just went through a rough stretch where now they're going to be back on speed. Similar like Kyle Busch, like he sucked during that stretch. He came back. He had a top 5. He had one of the best cars at Kansas, just like he did at Vegas.
Love that 4-1 bet we got, man. That was such a good bet.
I was very happy with that. Yes.
Yeah.
But
that stings. Like 4-1 bet can be great. Like I liked all my outrights. I even liked. I know Byron crashed or not crashed, but hit the wall in his qualifying lap. But I think they changed their setup because they started so far back. But had he started up front, I think it would have been one of the best cars. And 10-1 value I had on Byron based off his practice. And had he qualified fifth or sixth, maybe like he could have, or second, that would have been amazing value. So I don't feel bad about my Byron 10-1 bet. I don't feel bad about my Ty Gibbs 18-1 bet. Ty Gibbs was in second for a lot of that portion of certain portions of Kansas there. He was running second or third and looked really good as well. And, like you said, he finished 32nd because things happened at the end there, but he was a top 5-6 car all day. I'm happy with all these bets that I lost. But you're right. We went through a stretch of short, flat tracks or just short tracks, we could say, mile or less. But we've had Texas and Kansas now, and look who bounced back at Texas and Kansas and Dover for Kyle Busch's sake. Dover's kind of one of those. It's not short track. It's not an intermediate. It's kind of in between. It's its own unique thing. But Kyle Busch has bounced back. Ross Chastain did great at Kansas and great. He was solid at Texas. There's guys that do great at certain track types and not. And we even talked about Chase Elliott. You liked his top 10, but third place was super flattering for him. He was a back half of the top 10 guy all day. And sometimes even slightly outside of the top 10, but usually inside. More just like in that 6th to 8th place range is where Elliott was all day. But the shorter, flatter tracks or the shorter tracks in general, plus Dover, because he's always been great at Dover, have been really good for him. So like right now, I think we're like at a sell point for Chase Elliott. We hit like a buy point for Kyle Busch. So we just got to keep that in mind. Like who's a buy, who's a sell, who's riding higher than they should be, who's riding lower than they should be. And I look at Noah Gragson, his last 3 finishes are 3.69. So his average is 6, but I don't think he's a sell high right now going into Darlington. And obviously we're going to get into Darlington, but just as we look at, the point standings, who's riding high, who's been outperforming or out finishing their performance, or maybe had a good run of tracks, and who's had a bad run of tracks. That's something we definitely need to look at going into Darlington and Charlotte. I just merged them into one track.
Yeah. Another one guy that has hit a rough stretch as well is Ty Gibbs. He started out super hot this season. Another, like you said, got caught there with that pit strategy. But going back to Gragson, he's now 19th in points. And I'm going to go back on something I said last week and or the week before, saying I think the cutoff line is pretty much Logano or above. I could see Noah Gragson pointing his way into the playoffs this year.
He's the only one I can see that. Yeah.
He's 19th. He has 216 points. He's still 53 behind Logano. But, you add in, remember, he has that 35-point penalty from earlier this year. If he wouldn't have had that, he'd be right there at 241. He'd be 28 behind Logano.
Yeah.
I don't think
Kez is the target right now.
Yeah.
So he's 51 behind Keselowski.
He's 71 behind Kez.
71 behind. I'm sorry. 71 behind Keselowski.
Which is still a shit ton of points.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But he, if anybody could do it, I think Gragson could definitely do it.
I agree with that. I mean, Darlington's a great track for him. There's a lot of wild card races like Daytona, another Darlington for him. That's another one. But then there's tracks that aren't good for him, namely Sonoma, Chicago, Watkins Glen. Is that in the regular season? I don't even see it here. Oh, Glenn's in the playoffs now. But a couple road courses which aren't great for him because Noah Gregson's never been a great road course racer. So tough to say. With Noah Gragson. But I think he can claw his way into a puncher's chance, but he can't really afford many stinkers outside of the two road courses.
Nope. But I'll ask that question later. That was in my head. Other than that, though, I mean, there's really not much change in the standings.
Yeah.
I don't really have any comments.
I don't either. It's so weird because so many, or I should say, the last two seasons in the next, debut of the next gen, etc. We've had so many scenarios that have been like really interesting, or like win and get in, like 18 winners, above this 15 or 16, like all sorts of and like this year just feels so much more calm in the cut line. Obviously, it can move up if drivers outside the cut line win, and that's certainly always going to be possible with, especially a couple road courses, Daytona, and certain drivers being great at certain specialized tracks like Eric Jones at Darlington, Noah Gragson at Darlington, that kind of stuff. But other than that, it feels so much more calm this year in terms of the playoff picture.
And that's another thing to consider because, like, obviously stuff can happen at road courses, but for the most part, I think we know who's going to win these races.
Mm-hmm.
We have Daytona in the regular season, but right now we have Hamlin with 3 wins, we have Byron with 3 wins, and we have Larson with 2. So out of the first 12 races, 8 of them have been won by 3 different drivers. And obviously Reddick has a win, Chase Elliott has a win, Christopher Bell has a win, and Daniel Suarez has a win. How many winners? What's the minimum amount of winners that you could see in the regular season this year?
Yeah, the minimum amount. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
We have 7 right
races. Now. Yeah, 7 through 12 races. I see Larson, Hamlin, and Byron each probably getting at least one more win, right? So that, and there's 14 races left in the regular season. So that takes away 14 minus 3 is 11. So at most, we could have 18, I think. But obviously we're going to see some other repeat winners. I would say halfway between 7 and 18, 7 and 18, whatever that ends up being.
12 and a half.
12 and a half probably is the over-under.
I would take under. I think we have less than 12 winners or less than 13 winners in the regular season this year.
Yeah. I think 12 and a half is a fair number.
We need to set a line on this.
Like, Truex hasn't won. Blaney hasn't won. Ty Gibbs hasn't won. Ross hasn't won. Buescher hasn't won. He almost did. Kyle Busch hasn't won. He's been in the mix a couple times. Keselowski hasn't won. Bubba hasn't won. Logano hasn't won. But it also feels like a year. It also feels like a year where a lot of those guys just aren't as competitive as they could be. It is such a top-heavy year, which makes betting outright suck, to your point of not being an outright better.
Yeah.
But the favorites been kicking ass this year. And you know what happens when the favorites kick ass? I lose. In terms of betting, like outrights. it does feel like a favorites kind of year, but I do think there's enough variance in the sport and enough different tracks still to come that 12.5 feels like a fair line to me.
Yeah, if that was available, I would hammer the under.
Hammer or just bet?
I'd hammer it. I think here's the thing. Ty Gibbs, like you said, Ty Gibbs hasn't won. Alex Bowman hasn't won. Ross Chastain hasn't won. Buescher hasn't won. Kyle Busch hasn't won. Here's the thing. I could see all those guys not winning in the regular season.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think Truex wins. I think Blaney wins. So that gets us 7, 8, 9. I'm going on record now, May 7th, that there are going to be 9 or 10 winners, and that's it in the regular season. That is my prediction right now.
I would definitely take over 10.5. Definitely would take over 10.5.
If you give me like plus 220 under 10.5, I'd bet it.
Well, yeah, but now you're saying plus 220. I'm saying
if the line is 12.5 and we're moving it down to 10, I think 220 is more than fair.
Well, sure, but you were just saying you would take under 10.5, and you didn't specify any juice at that point. And that's why I was saying I'd take over 10.5.
I was just saying. I just realistically see. I think that's just how I see this regular season going: is 9 or 10 winners, and that's it.
You don't see SVG or Dinger taking one of these road courses, or
that could be the one thing that I'm not taking into account. 2 road courses,
Sonoma, and
I think Truex wins Sonoma.
Yeah, we've got Daytona. We've got Indy Oval back, which always seems to throw in a weird ass winner, right? Like Paul Menard or Casey Kane. And I know Casey Kane won a bunch, but like he wasn't like a dominant winner,
right?
Or a Ryan Newman, like those kinds of guys seem to win Indy. You get some of your popular ones too, like your Jimmy Johnsons, your Jeff Gordons, your Kevin Harvicks, etc. But Indy does tend to throw in a few surprises.
We have Iowa.
Iowa's a wild card. Ish.
Not like Joey Logano. First race, Joey Logano's going to win it.
Gateway or Iowa, I feel like are like Logano stamped tracks. And he's always been good at New Hampshire.
We got Pocono, which could turn into a fuel mileage race.
Yep.
But
variance happens, man. Variance happens. In Darlington, Eric Jones could win Darlington. Noah Gragson could win Darlington.
That's what's going to happen this week. Like I sit here and say there's going to be 9 or 10 regular season winners, and Gregson's going to come out and win this and just throw my shit completely out.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to win his first oval at one of these 2 Darlingtons or some bullshit like that. Non-drafting oval. Like something weird. Something funky is going to happen.
Austin Dillon's going to come out with an actual race car and win it on fuel mileage this weekend.
Chicago after his dad gets fired by Team Penske on the IndyCar set. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. But yeah, that's just, I don't know. That's just how I see this going down. I think it's going to remain and continue to be a very top heavy year. Just the vibe I'm getting, and it's hard not to.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it. And we talked about this with as the same generation of car keeps going on and on, the bigger teams, names, drivers win more and more because they have the ability to adjust, adapt, hire resources, etc. more. So there's less unknown, there's more known, and it becomes more top heavy.
Any other things you have from the standings before we get to whine about it?
Okay. Who is most likely to win outside of, the top 19? We're including Gregson there. So Cindric or lower, who's most likely to win their way in?
McDowell.
Road courses, Daytona.
Road courses or Daytona. I was about to say Cindric because he's really good at super speedways.
At both of those as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd go McDowell because there is only one super speedway left in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd go McDowell. Plus, I really just like how that team's performing. And we're going to get to Eric Jones talking about Darlington this week. I don't know what to think about him this week.
We'll talk about his back. I have opinions. And I think you know where my opinions are going. Yeah. I think you know where my opinions are going.
Yeah.
I would agree McDowell. I would have said McDowell too. I think the second most likely is Cindric. I think the third most likely is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
I would agree with that. Maybe one of the Stewart-Haas of Priest or Barry at Martinsville. But no, that's a playoff race, ain't it?
Yeah, Martinsville's a playoff race. I'm just saying Ricky because Daytona, and I feel like he's always got a chance to be a threat at one of these random intermediates like Nashville, Darlington, Charlotte, the 600, right? Like 600 oftentimes will just throw a random winner in there because it's so long and we get so many fucking wrecks there and cautions and stuff. Iowa, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has been great at Iowa in the Xfinity Series. That's where he had that win where he blew an engine right in front of Carl Edwards. And Carl Edwards, his teammate, hit him across the finishing line to have Ricky win. Like, there's an opportunity or two here for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's been good at Richmond recently. Like, there's still another regular season Richmond race. I feel like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is the third most likely to win a race. Am I saying he's going to win a race? Absolutely not. I'm saying in terms of outside the top 19 in points, I think he's third most likely because he is a high upside, but also low downside, or whatever you want to call it. Lots of downside driver. He's got a lot of variance to him.
You know who's an interesting discussion here is Hocevar.
Yep.
Because I feel like the guy's 20th or worse in points. He is the best of them, but he doesn't have the highest upside. He's like a weekly top 15 threat, but never a true top 10 threat, if that makes sense.
I agree with that. And I do think he's a top 10 threat, but it's like a very back half of top 10 threat is his upside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not a top 5 threat for sure. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is a top 5 threat on occasion. And the difference to me is the car. If Carson Hocevar was in Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s car, I think Carson Hocevar would be especially at intermediate tracks, a top 5 threat pretty regularly. But Spire is still Spire. They're still always going to be a little bit behind based off of where they are right now. And yes, JTG is still always going to be a little bit behind as well, but they're a more mature team. They've been around longer. They've had AJ Allmendinger. They've had Ryan Preece. They've had Marcus Ambrose. Now they have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They're just a more mature team that has had more upside throughout the years. So I just think they're a little further along than Spire as far as JTG, which is why Stenhouse has that top 5 upside, but Carson Hocevar only has very back half of top 10 upside right now.
Another thing that kills Hocevar, third slowest pit crew in the series.
That's a great point. And that's part of it. A lot of that is, it's part of it. That's also part of it for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. though, as well. His pit crew has not been amazing.
Right.
But it's even worse for Hocevar.
Yeah, he's down there too. Yeah. Yeah, I go the bottom 3 are Hocevar, Hemrick, and the 15.
Makes sense.
Which is usually Gralla.
And Colleagues past few years had some pretty bad pit crews on both their cars. So yeah, makes sense. And
this brings up just a quick side discussion on, we've talked about Chase Elliott not being as fast as the finishes he's getting. One reason why is he has the fastest pit crew this year.
Yep.
And that is so important with this car and how important track position is with this car.
Absolutely.
So it's another one of those aspects and statistics you have to take into account.
Here's another thing. Denny Hamlin's had an amazing pit crew, And the one race where I was kind of like, oh yeah, like pit stall, because we always talk about like the first pit stall or whatever. And it's like, well, I'm not really worried about Denny Hamlin qualifying 14th because like, he's got a good pit crew. I don't think it's necessarily going to matter at Kansas, but like, so I wasn't really thinking about handicapping the pit crews at Kansas because it's such a less of an effect than it is at some other tracks that are especially track position tracks. And his pit crew didn't screw him. It was getting in and out of his pit box that screwed him, mainly out.
Multiple times.
Because he ran into traffic each time. So it was pit selection by qualifying 14th. And then and Hamlin kind of went on, I don't know if you heard about it on Actions Detrimental, but he kind of went on a rant about like how Austin Hill screwed him over on one of those, because when you're dead last on the lead lap and you're coming in a pit and a guy who's leading the race is coming out of his pit box, you should just give way. You have nothing to gain, whatever. You're dead last already anyway. Your team is averaging 12.5 second pit stops while Hamlin's is averaging 9.5 second pit stops. Just get out of the way. But he didn't, and Hamlin thought they would because they had literally communicated with Austin Hill's crew or whatever team, crew chief for that, and then they didn't yield, and so Hamlin had to check up and stop and all that stuff. And it's like, what are you doing? And Hamlin even said, like, Joey Logano at Talladega, Joey Logano was leading, and I'm sitting here, hanging out in the back of the field, just maintaining my draft or whatever, and stage ends, and Logano pits, and I'm in the Austin Hill situation, and Logano's me. I just check up and let Logano go. I know I'm going to start the end anyway. Like, I'm not going to impede the leader's race to gain nothing.
and that could be inexperience, or it could be just the fact that Austin Hill is probably an asshole.
And possibly a combination of both.
Yeah, probably a combination of both.
Yeah. So definitely a weird situation there. But you're right. Like, pit crews is an important factor, and that's where Carson Hocevar doesn't benefit. That's where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. doesn't benefit, and guys like Chase Elliott does. Christopher Bell has had a pretty good pit crew this year compared to last year because he still has that Ty Gibbs pit crew from last year. Right? Remember they swapped it over in the playoffs, and he's still using that same pit crew this year, which was awesome last year.
And one guy that has a really good pit crew, but surprisingly isn't quite getting, like, kind of disappointing in the results is Joey Logano.
Yep.
Logano has like the third fastest pit crew this year. And, we know how much he's struggling.
Logano's pretty toast at these intermediate tracks, but I wouldn't say all of them, but like the classic 1.5 mile intermediates. Darlington will be fine. So kind of not a cookie cutter, a unique track, not a cookie cutter. I think obviously Gateway, Iowa New Hampshire should be good tracks for him. Nashville should probably be fine for him, but I don't know based off Dover. Charlotte, it's so long, like, that anybody can kind of do well. Plus that night the Fords came to life. Like, I think we're coming up on a stretch of tracks where Logano can kind of benefit. At least from here through Nashville, other than maybe Sonoma, which, I don't think Sonoma's a good track for him at all. But aside from that, I think we're in a stretch of like 6 out of the next 7 races. Joey Logano could kind of pop off here.
I agree with that. And this is definitely a good time, I think, to buy low.
That's when we were talking about like buy low, sell high. Like, this is a good buy low spot on Joey.
He was 50-1 last week. I mean,
yeah, but the funny thing is I had him at 1.9% to win. So it made sense. Like, to me, that's where my model was. But this week my model is like in that 4.5% range on Joey Logano. So 40-1 is just too long. Like, I set out in my write-up, like on my action app blurb or whatever, like 25 to 30 is where I'd play this. Now, I have value on it at 30. I have value on it at 25. But we know they're not quite where they should be. So I'm being a little conservative and saying, like, maybe just 25 or 30 play this too. But 40 is still too long. Just too long.
Yeah. That was well, we'll get to Darlington here in a second. But first we got to do Wine About It, presented by Luvabella Winery. I have this week Passion Lemonade.
Dude, Dude.
You got the same one?
Let's go.
There we go. What's the chances of that?
That's I know.
Funny. I don't think we've ever done that.
No, we've never done that.
Oh.
No way.
I do like the lemonades. I like the.
We got to try it at the
same
time, I guess, and see what our reactions are at the same time, because that's pretty.
Have
funny.
you not had it yet?
And once again, I didn't bring a. I didn't. No, I've never had it, and I didn't. Bring
you've never had it.
Down, so I'm just gonna.
This is pretty good. I like the flavored ones better, but this one's pretty good. That's fine.
Right. Well, I'm gonna try mine because I've never had it.
Cheers.
I was expecting way worse, and I really like that. My expectations are low, and it blew the doors off that.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be really lemony, and it wasn't. Which, I love lemon, don't get me wrong, but I didn't think I would like a very strong lemon alcohol, wine, whatever. But it's not super lemony. It's just lemon flavored, like you said. It's a good wine. Yeah. I like it. I actually really like it.
I could definitely drink a few glasses of these. Plus, it has a little bit of carbonation in it.
Yep.
Which just adds a little bit more to it. But yeah, it's very good.
I like that a lot.
10% alcohol.
Yeah. So it's not the 12.5%, 13.5% you get with the others.
Right. Definitely a sweet wine.
Yeah, for sure. It's sweet. I always gravitate towards sweet things. I have a sweet tooth.
Same. My wine about it this week. I wrote a couple down just to have options here. I already talked about Brett Griffin and his comments about the finish. So I guess I'll go to the comments, before the caution came out, before Kyle Busch wrecked and before that final caution came out, everyone was saying, it was going to be a great battle between Truex and Hamlin. It wasn't going to be a battle. Truex was going to fly by him. Like, Truex was closing 0.7 of a second a lap on Hamlin. And obviously, Hamlin was in fuel save mode. And I heard on Actions Detrimental that, they were about to tell him to go, and stop saving fuel. But I think Truex wins that race easily if that race goes green. I don't see that being a battle because I don't think Hamlin had the fuel, and neither did Truex or his crew chief. Like they were certain that Hamlin did not have the fuel to make it to the end of that race. I think Truex wins that race. It won if it stayed green, and 2, if we had one more lap other than green, white, checkered. I think Truex wins that race. But I just thought it was really weird how people were they not watching the broadcast, because Truex came from like 4 seconds back to enough to where I will say, I said I did not like betting outrights. I do like betting, live betting. When I can watch the race and see how it's going. Truex was 10-1 when he was closing at the speed he was to Hamlin, which is an immediate, like you bet that just based on the outcome.
My problem
or the expected outcome there.
With it, it's just so hard to follow every app and whatever at once, and so I have to bust out my laptop, or I have to come down and come down to my workstation and have multiple monitors open, and then have the race over here. Like, I want to watch it in bed with my dog and my girlfriend. Like, that's what we do. We watch the NASCAR race in bed, even though it's middle of the day. We just watch in bed or hang out, because like it's just more comfortable that way. It's more fun. I'm not like, I love live betting. I do live bet. I've made many live bets this year, but that means I'm doing it from my phone, right? And trying to it's. I guess I don't really. We'll talk about my wine about it, but to your points, like, as soon as I leave the Caesars app and go into the MGM app, if I come back to the Caesars app, it refreshes. Or if I go back to the MGM app, it refreshes. So, like, every time you leave the app, even if you don't close it, you leave it to go to another one and you stay there for more than, like, a minute. You come back to it, the whole thing resets. You have to navigate through and find NASCAR again. It's a pain in the ass. Live betting is a pain in the ass. So I always start with ESPN because they have had the best live betting lines.
For sure.
But when it comes down to it, I'm also just kind of into the race. Like, you were really smart to get, to look at live betting Larson or Buescher or Truex like that deep into the race, which is great. I like to live bet mine a more middle of the race, early middle, maybe slightly into stage 3, but like I'm just too into the end of the race to live bet it, I guess. Too focused on what my other bets are doing or things to like, well, I guess I should check if Larson's 12-1 coming to the last restart, starting third. Like that was genius. Well, don't get me wrong, it was genius, but like that's one of those things where follow Jordan for that.
Part of it was also my position, because like typically I try to keep an eye on live odds just to see what everything is, but I'm usually not like that heavy into it. But part of it was my position in the race, and we've talked about this before, where depending on where you're at before the race and then also during, you can kind of hedge against yourself. I had a pre-race bet on Hamlin. I had an in-race bet on Buescher, an in-race bet on Truex. Okay, so I had 3 of the top 4. So then I'm looking at, how do I essentially guarantee myself to at least break even or make profit? Well, I need to add Larson to that mix. So when that caution came out, and then they leave Larson at 12-1, and they actually put him up to 16-1 after those pit stops, which was just the fact that I didn't get that.
That's bonkers. But like, so, and that's the difference between you and I. I'm not looking to guarantee a profit. I think it's a nice thing to be like, I profited, I can tweet about it, I can whatever, brag on socials if I profit 5 out of 6 races. But that's not how I operate. I purely operate from is my bet plus EV or not? And you can definitely do that hedge thing where it is a plus EV bet. I'm 100% with you there. I'm just saying, for me, I'm not trying to lock in a profit on a race. And I'm just trying to just make the best possible bets I can make. And to your point, you did make an amazing bet. I'm just saying, from my view, I don't care if I had Truex, Hamlin, and whoever or not, Buescher or not, I would have made the Larson bet regardless. Even if I had Larson as well at minus 20-1, I still would have bet him at that 12 or 16-1. Like, I just don't.
Yeah.
And it's different philosophies. Like, I don't give a shit about hedging.
It is, and it's a great example there of our different betting philosophies.
Exactly.
And neither one's wrong. Like,
exactly.
Yours has positives, mine has positives. It's just how you want to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, and I was just kind of explaining why I was so heavily watching the live lines was because of my position there.
Yeah.
But like you said, like if you had ESPN open and you saw Larson 12-1, it was an immediate bet. No matter what, you
absolute instant bet. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I love live betting. I think live betting is a great opportunity. I think I'm actually going to do that a lot this week. Like, as we talk about Darlington, which we haven't even started to, we both are on Logano 40-1. But based off my model, based off my buddy Jim Sonis's model, there's only one other value on the board, essentially, if you average our models. And we both have value on them. So it's like like Jim has, I think, value on Michael McDowell to win. I don't. Well, I guess at 300-1 I do. But like, if you average our models, we have value on McDowell, but I'm not betting that. But there's one driver we both have value on. We'll get to that. But aside from Logano and that other driver, we don't have any outright value this week when we take both of our models and say, who do we both have value on? So, like, for me, that's like, okay, I don't have to bet outrights this week aside from those 2 guys, Logano and that one other guy, which I'm trying to save to hopefully bet, talk about for running hot. And then it's like, okay, I'm just going to live bet. Or, I mean, obviously, maybe if something crazy opens up after practice and qualifying. But other than that, I think I'm just going to live bet. So my goal this week is to live bet Darlington. But now that I realize how crazy, terrible, whatever it is, ESPN has been offering that late into the race. Now, I know earlier in the race, they've been, like, I saw Buescher 65-1 when he was flying through the field at the start. I didn't bet it only because I was like, I've bet enough this race. Well, no, not that was early. I think I made like I made way too many bets for Kansas. And again, I don't think that was a flaw. That was just a product of like, I have a lot of time and I found a lot of value. And like I said, it would have been profitable had that last caution not come out. Part of it's also content creation, right? Like I have to get 4 bets on running hot plus victory lane pick. We have stacking Dennys. I have Green Dot Daily on Wednesday and Friday now. So it's just like a lot of content I have to give, which means I have to find bets. So I'm going to have more volume at this time of year. Now I can focus on NASCAR more. But so when I have a ton of volume, I'm just less inclined to live bet as well. But I think this week is going to be very much a live betting opportunity for me in terms of outrights because I don't have a lot of outright value for Darlington.
Now I'm curious who you're talking about as liking, because there's 2 drivers that I kind of see that I would bet outright now, and I'm thinking about betting one of them.
Name the 2, and I'll tell you if one of the 2 is correct or not.
I like Byron at plus 850, and I like Bell at 14-1.
One of the 2 is correct.
Okay. I'm glad we're on the same page.
I actually think we're very on the same page. I'll just throw that out there. I think we're very on the same page.
Okay. But I did make a pact with myself that I'll never bet on Christopher Bell again. I kind of broke that last week because I bet on him to win the pole. I didn't even make it a week.
Dude, I can't. I'm just like, I'm done betting pole bets. I haven't bet one since a month or 2 ago, 2 months ago maybe.
Rivers
I'm done betting
laid
pole
out
bets.
plus 750 for him. He'd won 2 of the 4 poles at Kansas, and he always qualifies well at mile and a half. So I'm like, 750? Come on.
Yeah, but I don't care about that because that always changes. Now, obviously, Bell won the pole, but like shit like that always changes. You know, Stewart-Haas has been top 3 in all their cars in the last 2 years on the next gen car at this track, and then they go qualify 16th to 29th or something. I don't bet the pole. I just don't. I've made a philosophical choice to just not bet the pole anymore.
I do if I'm bored on qualifying day, you know, and I just want like something. I'll throw like $10 or $20 on pole winner and give me something to root for, you know.
Yep.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. But what's your whine about it?
All right, my whine about it is an anti-whine about it.
Ooh.
Not whining. We're anti-whining. We are complimenting. I don't do this that much, but okay. What race was it? There was a race a few weeks ago where it like rain delayed and then they dried the track and we raced and then like drivers were like pit roads wet or coming out of pit roads wet and they would like spin out and stuff. Remember that one?
Talladega, right?
Yeah, it was Talladega. And people were like pissed. Like, why didn't you dry pit road or dry whatever? And I was like, well, NASCAR's damned if they do, they're damned if they don't, because they either have to keep delaying the race to make sure pit road is dry and the apron's dry. And then people get really mad because, well, why did why haven't we started yet? The track's dry and blah, blah, blah. Because in the past, we just go and the track is dry. Or they get pissed if all of a sudden that happens in Talladega. What happened? So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't if you're NASCAR. Well, NASCAR started the engines, they go around, and then it's like, actually, we have to hold off on the green flag because we need to finish drying pit road. There were no complaints on Twitter. None. I was expecting a shit fest because it's the damned if you do, damned if you don't if you're NASCAR, right? Mm-hmm. Right? If NASCAR is like, okay, well, pit road's not dry, so we're not going to do the start your engines, because everybody's antsy. They want to get the race going. They want to start, right? So, like, if NASCAR just sits there and says another 5, 10, 20 minutes of, we got to dry pit road, people are going to be mad. But they actually weren't. We did the command. Jimmy Johnson did the command, replacing Richard Petty, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 extra pace laps go by because they have to dry pit road. There wasn't a single complaint on Twitter that I saw. And I looked at like the major account, like Bob Pockrass, like green flag is being, or, green flag's not going yet. We're going to do a few more laps to dry pit road. Nothing in the replies. Jeff Gluck, nothing in the replies. I was shocked because I was expecting people to be mad. Right. Well, then why did they throw the commands? Because people are ready to get mad about any and everything. NASCAR Twitter gets mad about any and everything. They got mad about Kyle Larson and Chris Buescher bumping doors. They got mad about an electronic versus a painted start-finish line, whatever, right? Like, NASCAR Twitter gets mad about everything. There wasn't a person that got mad about the fact that we delayed the start and ran 3 or 4 more laps. Not caution, because it doesn't count as caution, but just pace laps. 5 more? I don't know how many it was. Not a single person was mad. And NASCAR dried pit road. I was floored. I was specifically looking for that, too, after remembering the Talladega stuff.
That's how you knew it was going to be a good race right there.
Yeah. There was just different vibes. Different vibes. And because people are like, I was ready. I was like, man, I'm ready to get this race going. It's Kansas. We love it. We've been rain delayed. I didn't really watch the Formula One race, but I kind of was paying attention just a slight bit because I had a top 10 parlay, correlated top 10 parlay that DraftKings didn't catch, which didn't work out. But like, it's like, okay, let's go. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready for Kansas. And then it's like, okay, 5 more pace laps than we planned. Like, oh man, it's taken a while, but I get it. I understand why, but I didn't think I was going to be the only one that understood that. Or I thought I might be the only one that understood that, is what I'm saying. And everybody accepted it. There were no complaints. So this is my anti-whine about it. Cheers to NASCAR Twitter for not complaining about something, especially when there was nothing to complain about, but they find a reason to complain about things they shouldn't complain about in general. So cheers. Kudos. It is an anti-whine about it.
That is wild. So unexpected, too.
Yeah, I was floored. Absolutely shocked. And I honestly don't have a lot to whine about because, I mean, the weekend was so good. The racing was so good. There's nothing you can complain about from the race itself.
I didn't even have anything really bad to say about the broadcast. Outside, they missed the spins, but
and then that battle for the lead between Ross and Hamlin, they like cut out right at the beginning. But thankfully, when they came back, they were still battling for the lead. Or, that kind of like front loading the commercials. But people were really annoyed. I saw on Twitter about there's 5 commercials in the first 55 laps, but the commercials weren't there at the end, so they really did front load the commercials. The broadcast was good. I think Mike Joy, does his usual, like, I'm going to call one driver a completely different driver a couple times, but, you just expect that from Mike Joy these days.
Right.
So, it is what it is. But, yeah, I don't have anything to whine about it, so I went with the anti-whine about it, and let's give kudos to NASCAR Twitter for accepting 5-6 extra pace laps when I thought everybody would be antsy and a great opportunity to hop on hating NASCAR. No, everybody accepted it. Good job.
I like it. As always, whine about it or anti-whine about it.
In this case,
presented by Luvabella Winery. Make sure you check them out. Luvabella.com. You can get the wine shipped directly to you. Yeah.
Get the lemonade passion. It's good.
And if you like the lemonade passion wine, make sure you try the blueberry lemonade and the strawberry lemonade. Those are, I would say, better.
I agree.
But we are on to Darlington. Throwback race weekend, the middle point of the regular season. The Lady in Black.
Too tough to tame.
To tame. Don't pick any rookies here. Kyle Larson always dominates, but finds a way to lose it at the end. Typical track names for this.
Yeah, exactly.
But as usual, Kyle Larson is the favorite according to sportsbooks this week. 425, the best that you can get him. Denny Hamlin sitting at 5-1. Truex is at 7. Byron is at 850. Reddick's at 8. Bell you can get at 14 still, as I just mentioned, but he's as low as 9 over on DraftKings and Caesars. Chastain is 15-1. Pretty much the typical guys that we would expect. Before we talk about the favorites, though, obviously you and I are on Logano this week, 40-1. It has since moved. I think you can still get it at 30. But one guy that we always have to talk about at Darlington, and I've been wanting to know your opinion on this since you mentioned it. Eric Jones, 2-time winner here, always a threat. Finished top 10 last year despite Legacy Motor Club not having any speed. He obviously won here in 2022 with Petty GMS at the time in that next-gen car. How do we handicap this guy coming back from a broken back at a... This track is tough on the drivers. Like,
it's very tough.
This is a tough track. This is a driver-centric track. The good ones are going to be able to manage their tires and stay fast over the course of a run. Talent comes into play here. We know Eric Jones can get it done at Darlington, but what's your opinion on him? He opened at 40-1. I was kind of hoping or expecting him to be a little bit longer. 40-1. I did not jump at that. Did not bet it. And I was hoping that his top 10 odds would be a little bit longer, but they're not. But what's your opinion on Eric Jones heading into this weekend, his first race back? Because, another aspect of this is the 36 for 36. We talked about penciling Eric Jones in as a Darlington pick. I don't even know if I can do that this week, just because of this unknown with his back issue.
You're correct about all this. Back injuries are no joke. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have back pain from just being old and being tall, and having played soccer for a bunch of years where I was a goalkeeper, so throwing my body around, I have just like back pain from just all that, and it's sometimes crippling. I've never broken my back, never broken anything in my back. I broke my neck, so I guess technically kind of my back, like my spine, but breaking my neck fucked me, dude. Not because I can't do anything. I obviously didn't have a terrible, serious break. I broke the little process off the back of one of my vertebrae on my neck. But ever since that day, I haven't been able to run. I can run, but if I run, my whole body aches for days. If I, run a mile. Eric Jones actually broke his back. Not just the process on one of his, it sounds like when I say I broke my neck, it sounds super serious. Mine was super not serious. It's like the most benign break you can have, and it still fucked me. But look at Alex Bowman. He broke his back. He was out 6 weeks, and he was not the same. And here's the thing about driving a NASCAR. Here's the thing about driving a NASCAR. You drive that car through your butt. And you know what connects to your butt? Your spine. Your back. You need that feeling. You need that feeling. You need to feel how the car is. Plus, there's just the rust elements. And I don't care that it's only 2 weeks. I take 2 weeks away. And I know this is going to sound stupid as fuck. But I take 2 weeks away from playing Chippendale Rescue Rangers that I speedrun. And I'm a different speedrunner. I'm terrible. Whereas if I'm playing it every day or every other day, and I have my practice and whatnot, taking 2 weeks off is a big deal at 170 miles an hour at a track that's physical. Plus, just that, all that, my model just doesn't have Eric Jones at 40-1 or 45-1 or 50-1. And I'm not trying to spoil Jim's model either, but Jim Sonis and I, we have very similar models this week. We have the same top 6. There's a teardrop, not a physical tier, but the tier, next level tier, down to a 10-driver tier. And at the very bottom of that 10-driver tier, we have different drivers. He has Chris Buescher in his bottom of his tier of 10 drivers. I have Noah Gragson at the bottom of the tier of mine, so Noah Gragson 16th for me. But then Buescher 17th for me and vice versa. I think Gregson's kind of high on that next tier for him. But my point is Eric Jones is in that tier below the 16 drivers for both me and Jim. Mm-hmm. And that's just with our standard model, not accounting for back injuries and whatever. So the mark is just too high on Eric Jones. The top 10 mark is too high. Top 5 mark is too high. Top 3 mark is too high. Toyota markets, whatever is out there right now. Eric Jones is not value. Add in the back injury. I can't play Eric Jones right now. 36 for 36. I'm with you. I love Eric Jones at Darlington. This is one of the tracks I was eyeballing him for. Maybe I do Darlington too, but how do you get away from a Larson at a Darlington? Like kind of, that kind of thing. So that's another reason where like I feel in 36 for 36, I feel a little frustrated because I can't play. I cannot. I'm not playing Eric Jones this week in 36 for 36. Not a chance. Obviously, with a second Darlington, it makes it a little easier. But even if this was the only Darlington race, I wouldn't play Eric Jones this week in 36 for 36 at his best track.
Right. I'm right there with you. It is. What are his top 10 odds? Plus 175, I think. I
think Greg got it at 175. Best I see right now is 150, but I'm just pulling up stuff quickly, so I don't have full. Like I don't have ESPN open. He's 150 at ESPN. FanDuel doesn't have top 10s up.
175 at 365. I'm just pulling up there.
175 at bet 365. I wouldn't bet that. I don't have value on that. First of all, in my model, and second of all, adding the back injury in, I wouldn't bet that.
If I'm betting in that range, I'm just going to go to Gragson at plus 225.
I already bet that. Trying to save that. He opened 250, which is PJ got him at 250, and I got 225. So I already bet that. I'm definitely trying to save some bets for running hot, so I don't over bet this weekend. So yeah, but Gregson's definitely a top 10 bet. I bet I would much rather take Gregson top 10 than Jones top 10. Mm-hmm. And I actually, my model, like I said, my model has Gregson above Jones. I don't know if Jim's model has Gregson above Jones or not, but they're both in the tier below those top 16 drivers for both of us, or I should say for Jim. So it's kind of in that same range. So if you're on Eric Jones 175, I'd much rather be on Gregson 225.
Yeah, I think Gregson's going to be faster than Jones too. Like
I do too.
Straight. Even if Jones was 100%,
I'm not hating on Greg. I love him. Obviously, he's one of my really good friends. I hope he wins his bet. I'm just not on that myself. Mm-mm. But Greg's an amazing bettor. Greg's an amazing bettor. If you believe in him, I don't see an issue with Jones plus 175 without the back injury. I wouldn't bet it myself even then, but I can't with the back injury as well. And it's just different philosophies. And I legitimately, I hope Greg wins that bet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope I'm wrong on Jones. I'm not on him.
Same. And it's okay to not bet because it doesn't mean you're winning or losing money. It just means you're not betting.
Right. Yeah. But another top 10 bet that I do like that I have hit, John Hunter Nemechek sitting at 12-1 for a top 10. I like that. He actually has a top 10 here, driving for Front Row. He got a top 10. He's been very good here in the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series. Used the Fanatics boost to get him at plus 1440, actually, for a top 10, which I like. So I have hit that. Obviously, I got Logano outright at 40-1. Those are the two bets that I've made so far. I think you just talked me into Gregson plus 225 for a top 10. That was one that I was on the fence about.
Yeah, I think I'm at 170 or so on Gregson as fair odds. So definitely there. Again, trying to save bets for running hot, but with you there on John Hunter Nemechek. By quite a lot. I'm spoiling everything for you. Now I have to find other bets for us. This is what I'm saying. We get bet creep where it's like, okay, I was gonna have my 5 running hot picks tracked, my Logano pick tracked, and that was it. And now we're gonna be at least at 2 extra bets on that. I mean, maybe a third extra, given we're talking about one of Byron or Bell.
Right.
The good news is we're on the same page this week, and it's good to be on the same page. Again, not to spoil all Jim's stuff, but there's a lot of consensus from smart people I've talked to, so that's good. It was good.
Other than that, looking back at the 2 races here last year at Darlington, May race, William Byron in victory lane. He only led 7 laps in that race. If you remember, Truex led the most laps, led 145. He had an issue. I think he wrecked. Chastain led 93. Oh, Truex and Chastain wrecked each other. Chastain led 93. Those were basically the 2 best cars in that race. Byron was up there all day as well. Obviously got the win. And then in the fall race, it was Denny Hamlin who led the most laps, one stage 2. He ended up finishing 25th. I don't remember off the top of my head what happened there. Reddick led 90 laps. He finished second. Then Larson did get the win at Darlington. Christopher Bell also very strong in that race. But Darlington, this is one of those tracks where not only does tire that's what I was looking up. Kyle Larson, that was his first win at Darlington. You know, I swear he's been the favorite for the last 10 races and has had yet to pull off the win until last year. 770 laps led in his career at Darlington, just to show you how good he is at that racetrack. But this is definitely one of those tracks where shit happens. We saw it several times last year. You know, could tire wear come into play a lot? Like maybe we get another Bristol situation where we have a tire that actually just completely disintegrates, you know, in this race. Something to keep an eye on this weekend. But one thing I want to hit on is, what tracks would you say are the most similar to Darlington? Obviously, Darlington is unique in and of itself. It's 1.3 miles, so it's right in between a 1 mile and a mile and a half. It's super high tire wear, so you have that aspect of bringing those tracks in. Which tracks are the most similar when it comes to looking at Darlington?
Obviously, Homestead.
Yep.
100% Homestead. And here's the thing. When I fit different... so my model, like, it chooses the best variables. When I try to, you know, build different kinds of, like, variables to say, like, well, steep tracks or intermediate package or this, that, the other, the number one thing it pulls in is Darlington track history and Darlington plus Homestead history. Those are it is very dominant, Darlington and Homestead. Once you get outside of that, it's basically just what's your current form and what's your current equipment like. So I'm not looking at Charlotte, Texas, or I shouldn't say Charlotte, Kansas, Texas, Vegas, Dover. I'm not really looking at those, even though they're intermediate package races. They're all so different from Darlington. Honestly, I might consider Kansas the closest of all of them, because at Kansas you ride the wall. There's some tire wear, more similar speeds even than Dover. Texas, absolutely not. In Vegas, no. So,
what about Bristol and Dover?
Bristol, no. You don't you ride the wall at Bristol, but it's so much shorter. And yeah, this year's Bristol maybe with the tire wear, but we see Blaney's so good at Bristol, but he's terrible, generally speaking, terrible at Darlington and Homestead.
Right.
I should say, like, compared to where he is at other tracks. Eric Jones, another guy who's much different at Bristol versus Darlington. There's differences between Bristol and Darlington, and even Dover and Darlington. There's differences between Homestead and Darlington. Let's be real. Like, Eric Jones is much better at Darlington than he is at Homestead. So, but by and large, the guys that are really good at Homestead are really good at Darlington and vice versa. So I'm mostly just pulling those two, and I found the best model fit, the best predictive results are when you rely heavily on Darlington and also on Homestead, and then you just take general form and general equipment into your model.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, obviously, when I say general form, that means Texas, Kansas, Bristol, Dover, all those things. But that's like lumping them all together as one smaller piece of like form / equipment.
One bet that you have made that you tracked, which my bad if I'm spoiling another one.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. I forgot about this one until you just mentioned it.
Chris Buescher, and I want to know your thoughts on this and why you bet it. because I probably wouldn't bet this.
Chris Buescher was a top 5 car. Chris Buescher was a top 5 car in Darlington 2 last year. But look what he did in the other 3 Darlington races.
Okay.
His top 15 percentage, and I need to pull the exact numbers up because I was not expecting this. Let me get 1 second to pull these numbers up. His percentage of laps run inside the top 15, aside from Darlington 2 last year, was 49 laps in the top 15. I'm not talking top 10. I'm talking top 15, right? And so I'm over 11 and a half. So 11 and a half. I'm talking over 14 and a half, or sorry, over 15 and a half if we're talking top 15. His top 15 percentage was 49 laps out of 955 laps in the other 3 next-gen Darlington races. That is 5.1%. That would be the equivalent to around plus 1850 as fair odds for a top 15. Yes, he finished 10th in one of those races. Obviously, it was a very flattering finish. He was maybe the 22nd to 24th best car in that race.
Mm-hmm.
And in the other 2 races,
he wasn't late caution race.
Yeah, in the other 2 races, he wasn't even close. It was only the 2nd race last year. And obviously, he's coming off a great Kansas race, but I think that's inflation. Everybody's high on Chris Buescher right now because of what just happened at Kansas. Mm-hmm. And as we just talked about, I'm not using Kansas as a comparable track for Darlington. And Chris Buescher's Homestead results, he had one really good Homestead race in the next gen era, and the other one was pretty meh. And even that second Homestead, or even that Homestead race that was really good, he fell off at the end. So, I'm not there on Chris Buescher. His over 11.5 was one of my best values for this weekend. And I will, even if he's a top 5 car, I will stand by the fact that I like the bet.
Yeah, I was curious just to know your thoughts there, and it makes a lot of sense. It seems like he gets better finishes than he runs here at Darlington.
Yep,
pretty significantly. So you look back at 2021, he finished 9th in both races. His driver rating was 85 and 75. In 2022, his driver rating was 53 and 38.
The thing about finishes and driver rating includes your finish. So I like looking at things like average running position or green flag speed.
Yeah, I just don't have those up on me right now.
So, but to your point, like if I look at Chris Buescher, Darlington, 2021, his percentage of laps in the top 15 is a good metric. 95% in the first Darlington race, but only 55% in the second race. If we look at his fastest laps, 2 laps led, obviously 0, but like green flag speed, mid-teens, that kind of thing. So if he's in the mid-teens, why would I like his under 11.5 to be a top 10 or 11 car? I wouldn't. It's one of those spots where I just think the market's high on Chris Buescher right now because of what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's also 2021 with a different car, different package, different, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the next gen era, he's only had one good race at Darlington. And let me see if I pull up Homestead here too. He had that race at Homestead that was really good. That may have actually even been before 2021, or before the next gen car. I'm trying to remember the one where he led all the laps. Yeah, that was 2021 during the COVID era. He has led 0 laps in the next gen at Darlington and Homestead combined. And his fastest laps combined in 6 races are 10. At a track where if you get new tires, you get fastest laps, right? It's like he's just not getting fastest laps. Of the 6 races in the next gen era, he has 1 race with better than 35% of his laps run in the top 15 at Homestead and Darlington.
Like I said, I was curious on how you got there with Buescher because it is one of those where like I didn't have a stand either way. But
and
that
here's
makes
the
a lot
funny
of
thing.
sense.
When we talk about those tiers, I had, Jim and I have a top 6 tier, separate models, totally unrelated. And then we have a next 10 drivers tier. Buescher's at the bottom of Jim's next 10, and mine's even lower. But even Jim had over 11.5 as value in his model, and my model is even lower on Buescher than Jim's. So it's like, okay, I have extra reason to back up my model with somebody else's model, and obviously I'm spoiling a lot of Jim's stuff, and I appreciate the fact that he lets me talk about it, but I trust him. He trusts me. We both are, good at building models and doing numbers. That's what we do for a living. And I just think it's an extra data point there.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Buescher, though, his teammate Brad Keselowski is always very good at Darlington. You look at the last 14 races here, single-digit finishes in all but 5 of them. So 9 of the last 14 here, single-digit finishes, including a win back in 2018. The last 3 races here in the next gen era, 6th, 4th, and 7th. Could we see Keselowski come out and win this thing? This weekend. He's sitting at 18-1. That's not long enough for me to bet him.
It's not long enough for me to bet him, but I do like him this weekend. My model's higher on him this weekend than it usually is on him, but 18-1 is too short.
Yeah.
But I love Kez this weekend. I will try to find ways to bet Kez. Maybe it's top 4, maybe it's top 10. Trying to find ways to bet Kez, but right now I don't have value. Just because we like somebody doesn't mean we bet them, right? You still need a number. This is still a numbers game. Betting is it is literally only a numbers game. If somebody has a higher chance of finishing somewhere than the odds they're given, you bet it. If they don't, you don't bet it. I like Keselowski this weekend. I'm not betting a single market of his that's open right now.
I was looking at his top 10 and it's minus 140, and I don't like that.
No, exactly. I don't have value on minus 140 for a top 10 finish, even though my model likes him a lot compared to where he normally is. It's one of those things, man. Like,
it is.
You can't, just because you like somebody doesn't mean you have to bet them.
Mm-mm.
If I said Kyle Larson, Darlington, 10-1, obviously bet it. If I said Kyle Larson, even money, you don't bet it. It's the same thing with Keselowski. We for whatever reason, when they're not that short, like in your Larson, Hamlin, whatever range, people become less price sensitive. They just are like, 18-1, 25-1, whatever. It's long, air quote long, even though it's not. Mm-hmm. I'm not betting Kez unless he gets to at least 25, if not 30 for me.
That's what I was. You read my mind. I was about to say 25.
I'm in the 3.5 to 4% range of my model, and I think Jim is too. So if let's say we're generously 4%, that's 25-1 ballpark.
One guy that I'm looking at potentially for a top 10, sitting at plus 115 for a top 10 right now. That's Bubba Wallace. He's hit a rough patch. This could be a buy low situation. Last 3 races at Darlington, 7th, 5th, and 9th.
That's pretty good.
But then I flash back to last week where 2311 just sucked ass at their best track. And I don't want to bet it. But I also could see Bubba coming out, qualifying top 5 and running top 5 all day.
Yep. It's a tough one because, if I'm putting in my model right now, let me just do this. There we go. I have plus 125 as fair on him. So not quite there, but it makes a lot of sense. But I think that's just part of the nature of the game right now is we're at a spot where we've got 11 races under our belts. Darlington's a relatively unique track, so the books have a decent idea of where things should be priced. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be hard to find value in general. I do like Bubba Wallace this weekend. Again, like I not as high as I am like Keselowski, because Keselowski's track history here. When we look at like my track quality metric that I talk about or like to talk about, this is a great track for Keselowski. I'm trying to see if I have it saved somewhere. Intentionally saved it for this podcast. There it is. No, that's driver quality. Do I have my track quality? I don't think I have it up. I can pull it up, but I remember Keselowski was among the top for track quality. Here it is. Eric Jones number 1 in terms of like. Again, I'm not saying Eric Jones is the best at Darlington. I'm saying best relative to their own individual baseline average. Number 2, Harrison Burton. Number 3, William Byron. Number 4, Tyler Reddick. Number 5, Brad Keselowski. Number 6, Joey Logano.
Harrison Burton is an interesting one. Obviously, that car sucks even more than usual this year. And I DM'd you about this earlier today.
You did, yeah.
Him and John Hunter Nemechek were 2 of like the real long shots that I kind of eyed. And I haven't ran anything yet, but those were just like when I was looking around odds, I'm like, Harrison Burton 16-1, I don't hate. 6th here last year. That he did not run 6th, but he didn't run awful. He had a driver rating of 82.
Yeah, he was good last year, for sure.
Yeah, and then 14th in the spring race before that.
Mm-hmm. This is a really good track for him, and he's a guy like he's running terribly. So it's like the question is, what weight do you give current form versus track type history? And that's the big debate for me because my model, I don't pick that. My model picks the weights and everything, not just the variables, but the weights. And it's weighing Harrison Burton pretty much spot on at 16-1 for a top 10. So it's like, okay, if you individually decide that the track history is more important, then go bet it. If you don't individually decide that, then don't bet it, right? So it becomes a decision point in my model. But I wanted to talk about the track quality stuff because Bubba Wallace is 10th, which out of 36 drivers is top third of the field for sure. So yeah, I do have a good number on Bubba Wallace track quality here. But Burton's number 2.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's the second best driver. I'm saying relative to all his other tracks, he's the second most above his own average. Yeah.
Yeah. But going back to your point about current form, he like that team is awful this year. You look at average finish this year of 28th. His average finish last year was 24th. His average finish in 2022 was 22nd.
Yeah.
He's just he is back to a backmarker car essentially.
Yeah, I mean it's basically Kolek and Ware as the shit boxes, and Harrison Burton and Zane Smith, and maybe even Austin Dillon.
Correct. Maybe Todd Gilliland, but then he throws in a 14th place finish.
Todd Gilliland's 24th in points.
That's true. Why am I thinking Todd Gilliland so bad?
I didn't bet. I didn't bet this, but I talked about it on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio with Pete Pistone. 25-1 Todd Gilliland top 10 for Kansas. I was showing value on. I had it at a little over 6%, and of course 25-1's around 4%. I was like, I definitely would sprinkle that, and so I did. I didn't track it because I wasn't like I already made a million bets, right? So I was kind of rooting for Todd Gilliland to pull off a top 10 finish, and he wasn't going to because of fuel. But once that final caution came, I was like, this might be my saving grace to a non-tracked profitable day if he can hit this top 10. And because he took 4 tires, kind of like the Truex strategy where Truex restarted 9th or 10th or 11th or whatever it was and finished 3rd or 4th or whatever it was, 4th. Like Todd Gilliland could maybe drive his way into the back half of the top 10. He drove his way up to 14th, but like 25 to 1 was too long for that at Kansas for Todd Gilliland. And I feel that way about Harrison Burton this week. And it's funny because 2 weeks ago at Dover, I had fucking Daniel Hemrick value on his top 10 at 25 to 1. Same shit. Post-practice qualifying, and I didn't bet it. That's why I bet Todd Gilliland myself personally this past week, even though I want to have 8 billion in one bets instead of just 8 billion bets on Kansas. But like Harrison Burton might be that guy this weekend where it's like, okay, I technically have value on post-practice and qualifying at 20 to 1. Feel like I should bet him, that kind of shit. Like I'm going to find some random ass shitbox. And again, I think Todd Gilliland's not actually a shitbox, but like I'm going to find some random ass bottom third of the field driver, top 10 value. And apparently that's just every week these days.
You mentioned Austin Dillon being a shitbox, essentially a shitbox. He's another one that has a good track record at Darlington. Yeah. Good track record at Homestead. Finished top 10 last year. His top 10 this week is plus 750. And again, I can't bet that.
No.
As much as, and like typically, Austin Dillon and Stenhouse are usually my go-tos when it comes to like intermediate tracks and their long shot top 10s. But again, I'd rather go John Hunter Nemechek. I'd rather go Harrison Burton here at much longer odds.
Okay,
Austin
how about
Dillon's
this?
Just not
how
a
about
plus
this?
750 right now.
You're making a great point about Austin Dillon because I just pulled up his shit. Austin Dillon's specifically track quality isn't very good. In terms of like that metric that I'm giving where Harrison Burton's, but it's, I'm looking at the last 4 races at Darlington and that's the next gen era. But if we throw in Homestead, it's a lot better. And Austin Dillon's percentage of laps run in the top 15 is better than Chris Buescher's percentage of laps run in the top 15 over Homestead and Darlington. And even if we basically just take Darlington, it's around the same because, 15.2% for Austin Dillon in the next gen era. Let me pull up Chris Buescher. Buescher, 29%. But again, that one race, he was 99.2%, and the others were all 9% or less. But lumping Darlington and Homestead together, Ty Dillon has run more laps than in terms of percentage of laps run in the top 15 than Chris Buescher. Did I say Ty Dillon? I meant Austin Dillon. But yeah.
But I'm still I can't bet Austin Dillon this week.
No, I can't. Like I said, his specific Darlington isn't as good as his Homestead, and he's finished like Buescher's finished better than he's run at Darlington in the next gen era. 20th and 35th last year, but the first year in the next gen, 9th and 17th was pretty flattering considering he only ran 35% of the laps in the top 15 when he finished 9th. Only 2% of the laps in the top 15 when he finished 17th. So he basically finished his ceiling in both of those races in 2022. 2021 and prior, he ran a lot better. But again, RCR was a different team, different car. You know, in terms of like, I shouldn't say different team, but like different team in terms of like their pecking order of things. Like they were ahead of Roush Fenway Racing back in 2021, that kind of stuff, I think. Now they're definitely behind Roush, I would say, in the pecking order. So a little different scenario when we go that far back.
We obviously saw Eric Jones win. It wasn't last year, it was the year before.
It was 2022.
I think he was 50 to 1 or like
it was 80 to 1.
80 to 1, something like that.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in that range? And there's really not that kind of range this week. It goes from Gregson at 55 and then it jumps to Suarez at plus 1 or 125 to 1. Like there's no 80 to 1s this week. You're either getting Gregson at 55 or you're going well over 100 to 1.
Yeah.
Chances of one of those guys maybe stealing one.
Gregson. That'd be it. That'd be it.
Yeah.
I think he opened 60 at Bet365. He's now down to 50. So I would say him. At Bet365, Briscoe is 80. I wouldn't say Briscoe at all. But it would be Gragson. Like it's Gragson or bust in that range. I do like Jim's call, Jim Sana's call, like Michael McDowell being pretty good this weekend. My model has value on McDowell across the board in various markets, but I'm not betting him 300 to 1 to win. I'm sorry, I just am not. But if you want to get something crazy long, like McDowell could do something. I'm agreeing with Jim there that like McDowell's in that follow-up kind of tier to the top 16.
I'm glad that you mentioned him, because one bet that I was looking at, Michael McDowell under 20.5 finishing position.
I already flagged that one. I'm just giving away all my good bets again. I'm just giving away all my good bets again.
2 top 10s in the 4 next gen races at Darlington. And then his other 2 were wrecks. But he qualified 9th here last fall. Obviously, that team's been qualifying better this year.
Yep.
I haven't bet that, but I do like that over at Caesars. I haven't bet it
either, but I like it a lot. So that's my official position on McDowell. I have not bet it, but I like it.
Speaking of Caesar, like why they have 5 drivers that have the finishing position prop.
Yeah.
What is their thinking here? Why not offer more? I don't get it.
I don't either. Doesn't make sense. Why not offer half the field or the whole field? You can set odds on every single driver. If you have a model for 5 drivers to set odds, why don't you have all 36?
I like Bubba under 13.5.
I don't remember what I have on Bubba. I just that one. That's this one. I think 13.5 is right around fair in my model.
Cool.
I technically have the thinnest value on under 13.5. Oh, no, it's minus 130. No, I think that's fair. I think it's fair. I was thinking minus 115. Minus 130 is spot
on. One thing to pay attention to this weekend is practice and qualifying in the morning on Saturday. It starts at 10:30 a.m. The race itself is later in the afternoon on Sunday at 3. Also, major thing to pay attention to this week during practice is fall-off times between averages. You and I talk about that quite often. It's fine to put up a good 10-lap average, but what is your fall-off between your 10-lap average and your 25-lap average? You also have to compare those speeds. So if you're looking at practice speeds this weekend, make sure you're looking at that type of stuff.
Look at the trajectories of
the
averages. But again,
definitely one of those
it's not perfectly like that, because somebody will make a 10-lap run, they'll come in and pit, and they'll make a 15-lap run, and the fall off between their 10 and 15 will look terrible. But it won't be. So you always have to that's why I would say watch practice and qualifying if you can. Obviously, it's not always possible. You and I miss practice and qualifying from time to time for sure. We just have lives. But if I notice this guy ran 8 laps, and then he came in the pit, so he's only gonna have a 5-lap average, but he's gonna have 9-lap old tires by the time he goes back out again on a track that eats tires. Don't look at fall off in that case. So it can be a little, it's not subjective, but it's more like, make sure you're paying attention to ginormous gaps. You probably should be pretty skeptical on those. But I'll be laser focused on practice this weekend simply because I want to know when those gaps happen so I can be better than the market or the public on that,
I'm trying to find tire notes here, and they make these so fucking hard to read.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was reading Xfinity and trucks. Okay. Right side tire change for cup teams at Darlington. We'll run a different. Okay, this is the same left side tire that the teams ran at Darlington in both races last year. Different right side tire though, than what they ran at Darlington last year. Same tire that has been ran 6 times already. Same right side tire that's been ran 6 times already this year, including Kansas last weekend.
Yeah.
Same tire setup that's going to be ran at Charlotte in a couple weeks. So just something to note there.
Yeah,
tires are going to be the biggest.
Yeah. I'm very less worried about tires this weekend than some other tracks where, like, especially like you got all these 1.5s and there's like all the same tire combination. I think that's important. And then like when there's a deviant tire combination and it, like flips the field or whatever, I think that's something to pay attention to. But like here, it's such a unique track. It could throw a little wrinkle into how it wears, into how it handles, which might affect a few drivers, but this is very much a specific style of driving and things like that. I think it's going to be less of an impact here than maybe at some other tracks.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, you have anything else for Darlington before we get to our picks?
I do not. I'm dreading the picks. How'd our winning picks go for Kansas? Yeah,
you're going first on both.
Yeah.
So, I think we did pretty good on our winning picks.
Did I take Larson?
You had Larson, so you got the win, and I had Hamlin, so I had arguably the best car. So
yeah.
Great picks last week. You now have gotten back on your horse here. You got Larson the last 2 weeks with a second and first place finish.
Let's go.
I have back-to-back top fives. So I got my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the last 10 races. I picked someone finishing the top 6. So
wow,
looking to continue that.
That's kind of how I started the year. I think I was like that with like top 6 or 8 or something.
Top 8, yep.
Yeah.
And you are now winning though with 2 wins on the year. I'm still stuck at 1. So
what's our average finishes? I'm curious on that.
I am at 9.58 and you are at 11.25.
Yeah. Interesting.
You had Blaney at Texas finished 33rd, and then Bell at Talladega that finished 38th.
Yeah. All right, so it's Darlington. I'm going to take Mr. Consistency at Darlington and Homestead, and it's not who you think. Or maybe it is who you think.
Gut says Larson, but since you said it's not who I think, it's not Larson, so I'm going to go Hamlin here.
Consistency. William Byron.
Fuck.
He has been the top 6 in green flag speed in every single Homestead and Darlington race in the next gen era. All 6 of them.
He was going to be my third pick there.
I'm going with him as my pick to win, simply because I think he'll be near the front. And he won this race last year, but remember 2 years ago this race, he was going to win until Joey Logano punted him on the last lap.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So he could be going for 3 in a row had Joey Logano not punted him. Not in 3 in a row in Darlington, but 3 in a row in the first Darlington race. So I'm going to go William Byron as my pick to win.
I like that. I like it a lot. And like I said, I alluded to earlier in this podcast, that's a guy I'm thinking about betting at plus 850 this week. I'm going to go with a guy. I like the Byron pick. Obviously, it'd be easy to pick Larson here. and for him to get the win. But I'm going to go with a guy that has not finished better than 18th in the next gen era at Darlington, but has led over 200 laps in those 4 races.
Damn.
Martin Truex Jr.
Martin Truex Jr. It's either Hamlin or Truex, right? Like
Both of them Hamlin also has over 200
laps. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know.
Hamlin and Truex both have led over 200 laps, I think, in the next gen era. I pulled it up because I was looking at like Dominator points for DFS and stuff with these guys. But yeah, I was thinking either Hamlin or Truex was the guy you were talking about.
And I like Hamlin as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the tiebreaker there was Truex is running auto owners again, and I feel like he's due for a fucking win.
Tiebreaker.
Yeah, I feel like he's just due for a win. It's a very gut feeling
tiebreaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, Chastain's paint scheme this week is fucking awesome.
I haven't seen it.
It's a throwback-ish Busch Light.
Oh, we forgot about we didn't even talk about those, but like nothing. I mean, nothing's better than Kyle Larson's throwback.
Kyle Larson's is perfect. Absolutely perfect.
100%. It's the best one.
That's probably why he's going to win this race, is because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that Chastain's it's like a early 2000s Busch Light scheme. But I'm pretty sure they're using a chrome number, and I hate chrome numbers. Like those are
you usually hate them.
And I like this one. If they're using a chrome number, I think
and you like it, yeah.
It's perfect. So yeah, I really like that. I'm a big paint scheme guy. I like
you are. You really are. I'm not a paint scheme guy. I'm never affects me. I'm a driver guy.
Yeah. Now I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on 36 for 36, because just to wrap up last week, the Herbst gamble did not work out.
That might have cost me though. Like if I lose by, let's say I could get 18 to 20 points from the 15 car on a super speedway. If I lose by like 15 to 20 points in the end, that might be the decider. Well, actually it could be more than that, because like if I lose by like double that, because it would have cost me him being in another race and another driver subbing in this race. I feel like if I lose by like 30 or less, that might be the deciding factor.
Yeah, you need me to have another Gregson at Bristol day where a good driver only gets me 3 points.
And that's the thing. It'll happen for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad if I had an absolutely shitty day, it was with a shitbox. Like I would hate to score 2 points with Kyle Larson or something,
Yeah. Yep.
Like that would fucking suck. But I scored 2 points with a shitbox, so it's not as bad. I scored 3 points with John Hunter Nemechek, so it's not as bad if I scored 3 points. And like yours was with Gregson, which I would normally put in the John Hunter Nemechek category. Like that's not that bad, but he's been running so well this year where it's like a little more detrimental to you for Noah to score 3 points than for John Hunter Nemechek to score 3 points. So like I'm definitely not dead in this contest, but you're equipment adjusted, driver adjusted, I think in the lead for sure.
Yeah, currently through 12 races, I have 316 points. You have 239. But you also have a better roster of drivers left for the remaining of the year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But yeah, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on what way you go this weekend. Because Darlington is a driver's track. Do you go with a top tier driver this week and burn one of those, or what are you thinking?
Definitely not going Eric Jones. We already talked about that. He would be the number one option typically. Not going Harris Merton because both you and I took him for Talladega. Number 3 in my driver quality, like I said, is William Byron. That's an intriguing option. I'm interested in Byron. I'm interested in Tyler Reddick, but I do like saving Reddick for road courses if I had that available, but I took Nakota. And then from there, Keselowski, Logano, Truex, Kyle Busch, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Bubba Wallace, Carson Hocevar, Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain, Denny Hamlin, right? Like, so that's all the guys that are like significantly positive. So of that crew, like I could take Hamlin anywhere. I could take Ross at several tracks. I could take Larson here. I could take him at Homestead, where I feel like he's a little less likely to have problems. Hocevar is a very interesting option, except I already used him. But Wallace is an interesting option, but I always like saving him for Kansas or Vegas. Stenhouse is an option for sure. And I have not used Stenhouse, but I like saving Stenhouse for other tracks. Kyle Busch, definitely an option. Really like Kyle Busch. Honestly, I think I should have used him at Kansas instead of the 15. So that's a mental note there on where I should use Kyle Busch. Truex, I can use a lot of places, like our Richmond or New Hampshire. Well, it's tough. So, Logano, Gateway, New Hampshire, Iowa. So I'm going Brad Keselowski.
I love that pick.
I'm going Brad Keselowski.
I wish I had Keselowski available to do that.
He could win. And like I said, I don't like him 18-1, but he can win.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a great pick. I think that's what you have to do with your remaining.
Mm-hmm.
There is go Kez.
Go Kez. I agree. Go Kez.
I think I have to go one of the top drivers this week.
Yeah, I think you do.
I'm not going to go Zane. I could go Hocevar, but do I want to burn a Hocevar here?
Oh, this is one of his best tracks. Like, I'm straight up not trying to influence you. I really am, like, if I were you, strongly consider it. Look at his Xfinity record here. Or, sorry, truck record. Finished second at Darlington, third at Darlington in 2021 when he was a rookie. Second at Darlington the next year, and fifth at Darlington the year after that. So, second, third, and fifth in a truck, I should say, that never really, like, Nice has, Ross has won in it, Hocevar's won in it, but it's not like a top 3 or 5 truck. And the only reason Hocevar even finished third in the standings was just because he made the Final Four, but it's a good track for him. I'm not trying to influence you. I'm just saying this is a good track for Hocevar, and I would have taken him if I didn't have Kez. Or if I would have taken him over Kez if I didn't already use him.
All right, I'm going Hocevar.
Who were you gonna take?
I was gonna burn a Larson or a Hamlin or a Truex.
It's so tough to do that. I mean, I can't disagree with any of those.
I have Austin Dillon, who I'm not going to use this week. I'm not going to use Josh Berry. I'm just looking at the lower guys that I have. I'm not going to use Josh Berry. I'm not going to use LaJoy.
No.
Not using the 16.
LaJoy's not a bad option here, though. But LaJoy versus Hocevar, absolutely Hocevar.
Honestly, I think I'm going to save LaJoy for a super speedway. That's kind of where my mind's at. The other guy I was thinking of was
remember what we talked
John
about
Hunter
earlier with the rules? Don't use rookies at Darlington.
Hocevar's not a rookie. He raced here last year.
But he's a rookie. He just raced here last year.
I don't consider him a rookie then. He already has a cup start under his belt. Finished 17th last year, by the way.
Yeah, no, he had a good finish. Really good finish.
He kind of broke that rookie mold there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going Hocevar.
Just trying to make sure you factor in all the factors.
Well, and that's the other thing. I was going to go John Hunter Nemechek. He's not a rookie here either, though. He has 3 starts here.
I burned my JHN on, what the fuck race was that? Texas. See, and here's the thing. I shouldn't have done it at Texas. Should have done it at fucking Kansas. Yeah. John Hunter Nemechek at Kansas because he had a good race there. Finished 16th, I think it was, or something, 13th, somewhere in that neighborhood. I should have used some other dumb fuck in Texas. But I flipped the damn races, and I'm a dumbass.
Oh, that's funny.
But I knew in just a 1.5 mile intermediate was a spot for JHN. Should have just been fucking Kansas. Where like a more predictable 1.5, not a Texas track position bullshit 1.5, where Daniel Suarez finishes 5th with a 30th place car.
That's funny. Well, this is definitely a week that you can close this gap a little bit. You got Kez, I got Hocevar. And yeah. I never thought I'd be.
Here's the thing, I don't even feel that confident about closing the gap. Like Hocevar is such a good pick here.
Yeah, but Kez can get stage points and Hocevar won't.
I agree with that. That's really
Kez can put up 40, 50 points, whereas Hocevar might get 20.
They both can finish 9th, right?
Yeah.
So it just comes down to stage points at that point. Now, obviously, Kez can win, and I think Hocevar's upside is 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're in that range. So I agree with you. But I really need a good result here, and even if Hocevar has a good result for you, I need a good result from Kez.
Mm-hmm.
If Kez has a bad day, I'm not toast, but I'm pretty toast if Hocevar has a good day for you. Like at that point, you have a substantial lead if things don't go my way this weekend.
And it's been like the last 4 races have been a bad stretch for you. 4 races, you've scored a total of 57 points. Those same 4 races, I've scored 117. I've pulled away by 60 points just on the last 4 races.
Yep. And honestly, well, to be fair, I guess your driver roster has been a little better. We could call Kez and Buescher a wash. My other 3 have been pretty crappy, but yours were Ross and Bubba, and then we both had Burton. So, like, you definitely had the driver advantage over those 4 races, but 117 versus 57 is still massively in your favor, adjusting for the driver roster.
Right.
Yeah. So I need to at least, relative to expectations, at worst, suffer a small loss to you. I think if I suffer a big loss, it's not insurmountable, but it's dire. Which is funny because I started off feeling like I was in the better position. I had more points than you and felt like I had a better roster. And like you said, this past 4 race, even past 6 race stretch for me has been abysmal, right? Like if you look at Richmond, you had the 22. Logano, getting 49 points Logano in a down year for Logano is massive.
Yeah, that was a big week for me.
I got 13 from Austin fucking Dillon. Yeah, so over the last 6 weeks, 98 versus 109. You're almost outpacing by 100 points in 6 races. It's not insurmountable, but I'm definitely behind. I need to start catching up.
If I can do that in 6 weeks, you can do that in 26 weeks.
Oh, absolutely. No, this contest is not over. Contest is not over. I have a better driver roster, like I said. So, yes, you're ahead by 77 points, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, 77 points. But
that's ironic that I'm going to 77 this week as I'm up 77 points.
That's numerology right there. But adjusted, you're not up 77 points. You're up maybe a race-ish, let's say. You're probably up a race. So, good stuff. It's exciting. I'm excited for Darlington.
Yeah. Should be a good race.
It really should be. Was not excited for Martinsville. Very excited for Darlington.
It's going to be hard to, coming off of Kansas, it's going to be hard to just compete with that, though.
Here's the thing. Don't expect Kansas. I will say the best finish in NASCAR history is still Darlington. Craven, Busch. It wasn't the closest. It was the best. You know why? Because it didn't come off a restart with 2 to go.
Yeah,
it was a long green flag run.
Racing. Yep.
Multiple laps of beating and banging and slide jobbing and
I feel like
they're driving terrible. No, they're driving good.
I feel like there was an Atlanta race too that ended like similar.
There was several
very close.
Atlanta had a ton of great finishes. When Harvick won his first race in 2001, 3 races after Earnhardt died. But the year before, Earnhardt and Bobby Labonte crossed the line. Couldn't even separate them. There was one with, it was Gordon and Harvick the next year. There's been several Atlanta ones that have been great. But I'm talking like long, like, I shouldn't say long, but just in terms of like the actual best finish, I feel like Kurt Busch, Ricky Craven's Darlington finish was the best because it was pure racing. It was raw, cars aren't handling, beating and banging, hard track to drive. Like, let's be real, Kansas isn't a hard track to drive, relatively speaking.
Right.
And it was a 2-lap shootout, so they were already close. Darlington had the best finish in history. So we're going to the track, in my opinion, with the best finish in history, which was only trumped for closeness by the race we just came from. So we're in a good stretch here. Enjoy the race, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Good luck to everybody this week with your bets, fantasy. We'll be back next week to talk about All-Star race.
Yeah, I think that'll be a nice short
break
episode.
from points paying.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the race.
See ya.